why I included it and propose, the way, drafting our recommendation to the council in this way and including duplexes, because it'll go, at least from what I can tell, it'll go something like this. This will end up at council, and council's going to go and say, hey, the planning commission and staff are saying, go ahead and make this change, and duplex is going to go from an L to a P. And then like 4 weeks later, they're going to get another staff report that says, the planning commission considered the issue of duplex and blah. And I perceive that as confusing.
I suppose it gets back to whether or not, again, staff believes that the duplex is not a policy change. We're not making any policy judgment. We're saying there was a straight error in not including it because every other residential use is a P, and so it was not intentional. If you think that wasn't the case and there's a policy, then it's definitely the case that this isn't the place to make the change. But that one, it just seems, looking at the text and looking at all the uses around, there's nothing in the record to suggest that was, and looking at the prior zoning ordinance, there's nothing to suggest that was an intentional policy decision. But you're free to
Commissioner
view
Kennedy,
that differently. For instance, in 2022, which was one that you spoke to, which is adding clarifying the definition of recreational building, is that is defined in Prop R. Which this section of the zoning ordinance implements, and so it was inadvertently left out. The proposition defines that term, and so in a way, Prop R controls. It needed to be added because that was the definition established by the proposition. So again, it's just another example of, from staff's perspective, of just clarifying kind of the existing state of the
I get
law.
that. Commissioner Kennedy.
Thank you very much for the explanation, and I appreciate it, and I understand the point of view that you're expressing. But what I'm saying is slightly different, because what I'm saying is that after this is over and we review the next item, we will be discussing potential policy issues, which Commissioner here this evening might want to add the issue of duplex. So what I'm pointing out is to potentially make things more clear and less confusing, and having staff trying to create a situation that will avoid requiring staff to say to council, hey, so look, so you made this typo, but now we're going to revisit it as a policy, and that's fine. If that's the way that you feel it's easier to do, and you can get that across, then I understand your point. But about the recreational building, two things. You've added language, so it's not like it's in somewhere else in the code. Well, I mean, it's in Prop R, but the staff report could have said, this language is from Prop R, because we spend a lot of time reviewing these documents. And then we stand here and ask questions for an hour, because this is
so I think that's a good
watered
point,
down.
but it's a slightly different point. I'm going to go to Commissioner Fresco, who's had the light on, and then Commissioner Newbold. So, Commissioner Fresco.
I have a very, I believe, non-controversial friendly amendment.
You never know, do you? So try it out.
I've been trying to get this one in this code for a long time. Can we please, in addition to page numbers, index what code we're at the bottom? So when you're looking for 9.0 and there's pages and pages of A-1-small a, and you can't figure out where you are, it would just be so much easier to use this book.
Which of the planning department would like to take that?
Well, I'll take it as a friendly amendment.
Okay,
and
that's
I'm going to
great.
call the vote.
You can't. You move the motion. So
I can't call the vote?
No, you may not. Specifically, someone else may call it, but I think we're at that stage now. I just get that feeling. So, Commissioner Kennedy, your friendly amendments were not accepted. So at this stage, I'm going to put the substantive motion, which is 16002, moved by Commissioner Newbold and Commissioner Parry, seconded. Could you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Fonda Bernardi?
No.
Commissioner Fresco?
Yes.
Commissioner Kennedy?
No.
Commissioner Newbold?
Yes.
Commissioner Parry?
Yes.
And Chair McKinnon?
Yes. That is passed and now moves on to the City Council. There is a 14-day appeal procedure if necessary. No, it's in my notes. All right, it's not. So it moves on. We'll talk to the note maker later on. So 8B, 1248 Fifth Street. It's a development review and variance 15 ENT 0138. We need some ex parte communications, I believe. Before we start, we'll start Commissioner Anderson. None? Commissioner Fonda Bernardi?
Yeah, I met with the project team a while back.
I think we're just waiting for our attorney, but you're going to have to try and recall when it was and for how long and what you talked about. Just wait. Yeah.
It was about an hour, and it was about 2 weeks ago.
Okay. Commissioner Fresco.
I met with Ken Kutcher at the project site today at about 12:30 for about 20 minutes. And also, I was on the Landmarks Commission at the time that we established the covenant or discussed the covenant. We didn't establish it. But I was no longer on the commission when it was designated, and I was blissfully ignorant of the process it went through at the commission after that.
Great. Commissioner Kennedy. And Commissioner Fonda Bernardi, you will actually probably have to be a little more specific what you were talking about too. Yes, Commissioner Kennedy.
On March 1st, I received an email from the applicant's attorney, and the email said that he would like to speak with me, and he talked about the new floor area in the proposal being targeted along the alley. I wrote back and said I couldn't meet, but I had a question as to why he used the word targeted as if it was going to potentially move at some point, and he replied and said no, and that's it.
Commissioner Fonda Bernardi.
Yeah, I met and we talked primarily about parking. That was the big question regarding this project. So we talked about parking and restraints and backup distances and parking issues,
Right.
basically.
Commissioner Newbold.
I was not contacted by the team. Shame on you. But I do know the building very well. I actually used the post office when it was a post office, and I walked by the project today on my way back from the farmer's market.
Commissioner Parry.
Yeah, on Monday, I met with the applicant team for about an hour. We discussed the design, the TDM proposal, and parking matters. And then again today, I spoke with the applicant's attorney about the idea of off-site parking options.
And I met with the applicant, the attorney, the architect, and there's someone else in the room as well, on February the 23rd for about 85 minutes at the architect's office. And I've had several discussions with the attorney representing the applicant on TDM measures yesterday and again this afternoon. Both conversations lasted about 10 minutes. With that, I think we can have the Planning Department report. Mr. Albright.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Chair McKinnon and members of the Planning Commission.
Welcome.
My name is Scott Albright, and I'm a senior planner in the City Planning Division. Before you this evening is an adaptive reuse project of the former U.S. Post Office, as you all know. The applicant is the property owner who intends to convert this to creative office space for film production or television production office. Before you this evening is a development review permit to consider at approximately 13,000 square foot addition to this landmark building, as well as a parking variance for a 48% reduction in the amount of parking that's to be provided. In compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act, mitigated negative declaration will also be for your consideration and possible approval this evening. I intend to just be very brief. I heard somebody likes brief presentations, and I really agree with that as well. If you've ever watched me at Landmarks Commission, I fly right through these things. So just to give you all site, it is located on the corner of 5th and Arizona, and here's the aerial photograph to just kind of provide a little perspective as well as some context with regards to this particular project. It is within our downtown district, and it is zoned currently C3C, which is the Downtown Overlay District. The lot size is approximately 37,000 square feet. sounds like you're all familiar again. So here's just a couple photographs just to remind you that this building did function as a post office, and you can see most of the character defining features of this are on the front elevation. In your upper right hand corner is the rear elevation. That canopy and the loading dock was not considered character defining when it was in fact landmarked. And there are your Arizona Avenue elevations, as well as the north elevation, which fronts an existing parking lot. Just a little bit of relevant background to this. As you all know, it serves as a post office for approximately 74 years. It is designed in the Public Works Administration modern style. And back in August of 2013, just after there was the threat of the closure of the post office, there was a preservation covenant that was approved by the City Council. This was a really unique feature because not only did this apply to some of the exterior features, but it captured the interior lobby feature and its historic integrity as well. So that was something that was very, very important to the preservation community within the city here. Part of that, when that preservation covenant was in fact approved by the City Council, that enabled the city, or not the city, but the Postal Service to sell the building into private ownership. That occurred in December of 2013. The Landmarks Commission was all over this one and could not wait to get this one sold and into the hands of a private owner. So they immediately filed in January and held the designation hearing in March of 2014, where it was designated as a city landmark based on 5 of the 6 criteria. A year later, the application was filed for the adaptive reuse project. So we've been going through that, working with the applicant, getting the environmental determination or the environmental documentation out to the public for their comment. During that time period, we were approached by the property owner with concern about vandalism and some concerns and safeguarding that was necessary to protect the resource. So the Landmarks Commission considered and approved a certificate of appropriateness for what seems to be a very controversial fence around a portion of this property along Arizona as well as the 5th Street elevations. The fence, as you know, is approximately 5 feet, but it has gone through the certificate of appropriateness process. In fact, it was originally 8 feet tall, and I think everybody was really objecting to that, so we were very, very pleased to get it down to that 5-foot high level. In terms of the proposed project that's before you this evening, it is a 32-foot tall, 3-story with basement. That's the existing. The existing building is 1.5 stories. There is a proposal to build a 13,000 square foot 3-story addition. The building does currently have a basement. The square footage currently for the post office is approximately 34,000 square feet. With the addition, will increase to 48,000. The floor area ratio that is proposed is well below that is permitted by the zoning ordinance, which is 2.5, as well as the general plan of 3.5. Again, the intent is to create creative office space within the space. Here are your proposed elevations, which is what's important to note about this is dealing with the landmark has certainly introduces special considerations, and you want to have a compatible yet differentiated type of space. So in terms of how it relates to the landmark, you can see there's the rhythm of the front elevation, which is the historic, is carried to the rear elevation with the new construction. In terms of the size of those bays, they match the front to carry that rhythm. So that's a unique feature that's important for having compatible development, making sure it's differentiated as well. And here are your side elevations. Another consideration is, in fact, the building has what looks like a hyphen, so the building doesn't appear to be connected to the new and the old are not necessarily connected, at least, if you look at it from a perspective. That's important for being able to differentiate between the old and the new in terms of respecting its historic integrity. So your first consideration this evening is really a development review permit, and that's about the massing of the new construction. What you'll see and what staff is recommending is that the design is in fact sensitive, that successfully does integrate the new construction within the historic fabric, and this new construction will not impact any of the character defining features. Most of those features are either on the interior or along the Fifth Street elevation. You'll see that the symmetry of the historic building is maintained with this. In fact, it's symmetrical in the back as well. We talked about the design break, which gives that overall impression that the addition is separate. The scale that is proposed is appropriate to the surrounding context. This is not anything above and beyond what is currently in existence surrounding. In terms of its historic significance, the addition will be set back from the front elevation, which will enable it to be visually subordinate to the landmark, and which is very, very important consideration. And there's a consultant report that was presented to you, is the project, at least in the opinion of their consultant, is in fact consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation. And staff would agree that in fact the project, it does in fact meet the standards. So the big controversy is, of course, the request for a parking variance, and this is a 48% reduction from a requirement for 48 spaces down to 25. As noted in your staff report, we've outlined a number of special circumstances and unique hardships. In fact, one of the big ones is, in fact, the landmark designation, having to have a historic. The historic building, certainly with its character-defining features, impacts the ability for the applicant to make changes to the exterior, particularly where there are character-defining features along the front. The site has an existing basement. The poured-in-place concrete makes it very difficult to get underneath to add parking to the site. There's that preservation covenant that protects the interior, so it's not easy to probably do a tenant improvement when you have all of these character-defining features on the interior of the site. So that leads the applicant to pursue additional floor area where you cannot necessarily customize it to meet your needs on the interior. The general plan and the zoning ordinance include a number of policies that encourage the parking reductions in downtown, and with regards to historic preservation and historic resources as well. And as associated with your requirement for a parking variance is a transportation demand management plan that has been submitted several times. We've seen several iterations. I think you all have seen several iterations. And it includes a cash-out program which exceeds. There's a number of provisions and measures within that, but I think one of the strongest points, and our staff can concur, would be the cash-out program, which exceeds the state law requirement. And so they're proposing a $230 monthly cash-out allowance. So the environmental documentation was in fact a mitigated negative declaration. This was in fact circulated for public comment and review during a 33-day period starting in December 16th and concluding on January 19th. The initial study had noted that there were 5 environmental factors that had to have mitigation measures to bring them down to an acceptable level. The cultural resources mitigation, which involved 18 of those measures, was the most significant, and there was a number of mitigation measures that were included, but I think the most significant would be the preparation of a Historic American Building Survey report, requiring the applicant to salvage and reuse historic materials, as well as the inclusion of commemorative signage on site. And there was a 200 square foot notch within the site plan to include that commemorative area. So we've done our necessary noticing requirements for this. We've received a couple letters. I think you received some this afternoon as well. We have, of course, received a letter from the project applicant that addresses some suggested condition amendments, and we've been trying to go through all of those and incorporate those. Some of them are very typographical or just citing the wrong code section or the wrong code, in fact, but we're trying to clean those up, and with some other a little bit more meaty suggestions in terms of condition amendments, and particularly relevant to the transportation demand management. We've also received some correspondence from the Santa Monica Chamber of Commerce in support of the request, as well as Downtown Santa Monica, Inc. was not supportive in their letter that we received. The Landmarks Commission reviewed this at their February 8th of this year, February 8th meeting, and unanimously endorsed the proposal as well as the variance. I know we have a commissioner. Yes, I see him in the audience. Commissioner Burley is in the audience, and I'm sure he'll be speaking on behalf of the commission to let them know to let you know how the commission, in fact, feels about this particular project. So staff's recommendation is to adopt the resolution approving the mitigated negative declaration and the mitigation monitoring and reporting program. And then we are also recommending that you approve the development review permit and the variance based on the findings and subject to the conditions noted in the statement of official action. With that, I hope I was brief enough. And I
Trending in that direction. Thank you, Mr. Albright. Commissioner Anderson, the first.
Before that
Yes.
starts, can I also add that just to piggyback on Scott's report, in terms of the information that was submitted by the applicant team, really quite late last night, staff actually has not had a chance to complete our review of those conditions. We've worked as much as we can today to try and accommodate them and redraft, but our work is not complete on that.
So that, depending on how the commission goes and how we can possibly continue it to a later date, depending on the discussion. But Commissioner Anderson, you start.
Scott, can you clarify the process? So this has already gone to Landmarks, or will we make our decision and it'll go back to Landmarks? Was that advisory, or?
Landmarks has had an advisory role in this project so far. Once the development review permit is approved and the variance, it will have to go back to the Landmarks Commission for design review through a certificate of appropriateness.
Okay, and then will it also then go on to council for review of the interiors, or how does that? Right, because Landmarks doesn't have oversight over the interior, right?
They do not have oversight, and that's a big issue. The Landmarks Commission is trying to get that control of the interior from the City Council, but that has to be worked out through some type of action to get that. It's related to the preservation covenant.
But if it doesn't go to Landmarks, the interior will go to council.
It will
correct?
go to council. Yes.
Okay, great.
Commissioner Newbold.
And so, I mean, I think the answer is no, but it never goes to ARB to review the new building. They just don't, they're not part of this process.
That's correct. Because it is a landmark and a landmark parcel, the
Right.
design review goes to the Landmarks Commission.
Are there other questions at this stage? We will have another chance later. Commissioner Parry.
Yeah, is the fence question, is that within this body's purview?
We don't believe it is within your purview for consideration.
Thank you.
Let me ask you why not. I mean, let's get right out there. Why wouldn't the Planning Commission have some oversight of the total massing of the project, which includes from the property line right to the top of the building, given that this has been a public building for the last, whatever it is, 85 years, and that it is opposite 4th, 5th in Arizona, on which something will be built and by the city, and the relationship of that building to the street and to the buildings around it does squarely fall under our consideration. Why wasn't it brought to us for some discussion about whether or not a fence was appropriate? That seems unanswerable, doesn't it?
So I think a couple of things. One is it was a designated landmark, and the application for the fence came forward. So the appropriate review process was the certificate of appropriateness. The Landmarks Commission, of course, acted on that. In terms of the Planning Commission's purview of what is reviewed within a development review permit, we looked carefully at the findings, and what it speaks to is really structures on the property, and findings with regard to building mass and size and scale, and really talking about form and mass of buildings. We really viewed fences. We've not really brought fences in the context of development review permits. That's really been in the purview of the design review body, which in this case would either be the ARB or in landmark parcels as the Landmarks Commission. So we really look at that in the context of landscaping and fencing, and that's really how the review is bifurcated between the bodies responsible for looking at project applications.
But essentially, that was your decision, the planning department's decision about how it would proceed.
Yeah, I guess you could view it that way. It's really been and when you look at the code and the what findings are needed in terms of the development review permits and the ARB's purview, it seemed reasonable that it fell within that manner.
Mr. Martin.
Actually, yeah, Jane just said what I was. It's really based on the code and the purview of the Landmarks Commission and the appropriate body to review that at the time. So that's the reason it went before them.
Okay. Commissioner Fresco.
Can one of you, perhaps, also explain why a fence over 42 inches would not need a variance? Especially, I mean, I already asked this question to you earlier today, but now that I see that it's not considered part of the massing, but fences aren't regulated in downtown because we're supposed to have buildings up to the street wall, and so it ends up being uncontrolled and unreviewed. And this is especially, I mean, the Arizona side is one of our active commercial street fronts, and the Fifth Street side is one of the quieter versions in our new plan. So is this a hole in our works that this fence slipped through?
I think that's certainly the commission may consider that as part of your item 9A. The way that fences are measured and the way that they're regulated that's actually not new. It's in the current code, and it's certainly from the prior code, which is what controls on this project. You are correct that in commercial districts, or where, generally speaking, where there are no setback requirements, fence heights are not limited. It's really the height of the district. So the 42-inch height maximum, it was really written with residential context in mind, residential neighborhoods. In the commercial areas, that's not the case because there are no setbacks, and that's how the code is written, is that the fence is applicable to setback areas or yard areas. So the height of fences is really regulated through the design review process and what's appropriate. Obviously, if someone were to propose a 20-foot high fence, that's not likely to be approved through a design review body. So, when they look at that, they really look at the fence being proposed in context of the surroundings.
But if somebody is going to install a fence, even in downtown where there aren't required setbacks, in theory, there's some sort of setback condition occurring that makes them want to put the fence up. Mm-hmm. And the fence and hedge code doesn't say regulated setbacks, it just says setback, and this is clearly a setback that's been there for 87 years. I just really think it needed a variance.
Right, and again, this can be something that the commission would like to suggest if you're interested in as part of item 9A.
We'll finish, but it is rather striking that we've just spent 2 or 3 years discussing a zoning code and a downtown community plan which has insisted on wider sidewalks and open space and active use in the downtown, and here comes the premier public building that has moved from public hands to private hands, that's been open for 80 years, and suddenly a fence goes up and that's okay because it's reviewed by Landmarks. I mean, you said a 20-foot fence wouldn't meet with any approval. That might if Landmarks decided it was all right. Mm-hmm. And so it's an extraordinary sort of gap that they've slipped through to put up this fence, and we don't get a chance, apparently, to review it, according to you. But anyway, if there are no more questions, we might move to the applicant's team. Mr. Kutcher.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. Ken Kutcher here on behalf of the property owner. 1256th Street is my address. I'd like to begin with a acknowledgement of Commissioner Newbold's comment. Actually, I sent out invitations to everybody about 4 weeks ago, but we'll follow up on that. This is an important project. It's important because it's consistent with the preservation goals and policies of the LUS and the preservation element. It's also consistent with the direction that is taken in other planning documents. It's a key preservation project, and I think it merits this commission's support. It certainly has merited the Landmarks Commission's both attention and support. We endorse the recommended actions that staff has recommended in their staff report. That's approval of the mitigated negative declaration, approval of the development review permit, and approval of the parking variance. This project also has the enthusiastic support of the Santa Monica Conservancy. We've also contacted the LA Conservancy, and early on they met and seemed comfortable and have not expressed further interest, although we've continued to reach out to them. Presenting with me tonight will be Sejal Sanani of HLW Architects, and also Sean Mon of Gibson Transportation Consulting. Sejal will be addressing the architecture, and Sean the TDM program. I'd like to thank staff for their hard work. Apologize for the late submission. We've been working diligently over the past week in amplifying our TDM program based on comments from city staff and also commissioners who have offered their suggestions and comments. I'd like to show you the timeline. I wonder if we can get our PowerPoint up, but I'd like to show you the timeline. In particular, it will be partly responsive to Commissioner Anderson's question about the Landmarks Commission's review thus far, and there have been 4 courtesy reviews. Those occurred beginning in August and continuing through February. Those were courtesy review hearings at the Landmarks Commission. Because this is such an important project, we wanted to get their input all along the way, and we have developed a collaborative relationship with respect to the design of this project. This project will result in an expenditure of over $12 million as part of the historic buildings rehabilitation. We submitted some documentation of that from the project manager, who's also here to answer any questions in that regard. The building qualifies for this development review permit because it's under 32 feet in height. It's low scale. We've put the building addition in the right location. It's in the rear of the parcel. The partial 3rd floor is set back from the parapets. We've tried to do the right things in order to locate the addition in the right areas. The project will be the future home of an owner-user. He will be an excellent steward for the property. It's the kind of ideal use for this landmark building, and we're pleased, and we believe the Landmarks Commission and Conservancy are as well with that outcome. Obviously, a media production, creative arts type of use is a good use in the downtown, and we think, again, that's a nice positive outcome of this project. Finally, it's a landmark parcel. We're constrained about what we can do with parking, and hence we need the variance and an aggressive TDM program to do that. With that, at this point, I'll turn the presentation over to Sejal. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners.
Would you mind telling us your name and where you're from?
Sure. I'm Sejal Sanani from HLW Architects, the architect for this project. I apologize, some of the presentation seems a little stretched, even making it even more so horizontal. I have some printed copies.
It's all good. Just go ahead. It's fine.
So this shows the view from Arizona Street, looking to the building addition. We worked, as everyone has mentioned, very hard trying to keep this building compatible with the existing building so that the actual building doesn't stand out too much. The design aspirations were to make it timeless, classic, and not try to follow the current design trends, but make it so that it feels like in respect to the existing building. This shows the view from the north side. The 3-story addition hovers over the existing building, never really touching it quite. I also want to, we can comment on this a little further down the road, but there is a proposal to put a complete gate around here, so the site is really secured from the alley side. This shows in yellows the existing building areas, and in blue the new proposed building area. The site plan, which is what we should spend some more time on, the yellow again shows existing parking spaces to remain. Blue indicates new parking spaces added to comply with some of the requirements, and the green stripes indicate the new added bike parking spaces, 24 short-term parking spaces on the site for the employees, and this is a tentative proposal for 12 public parking spaces available at the commemorative corner, subject to Landmarks Commission's approval. The proposed site plan, floor plans, at the back side it shows the addition on every level from the basement up to the upper levels. And we can come back to any of these drawings when questions come up. The roof plan is actually very interesting. It shows skylight added all along the third floor to bring light all the way down into the ground floor and down to the basement level. Bless you. The skylights along the east and the west side hold back the addition from the edges of the building, and the new addition is actually set back 25 feet from the north and the south side and around 40 feet from the 5th Street main elevation side. The basement plan indicates a location of long-term bicycle parking spaces. This is actually very interesting on this building. The magic in the building design really happened in the section and not so much in the plan. The top drawing shows the existing building section, and because we wanted to keep it to a DRP application, we worked very hard to keep the height limit at 32 feet and tried to squeeze in 3 stories of the program requirements within that height limit. The project is designed to be a very high-performing building, and we can come back into details about the actual sustainable requirements if needed. And I'll hand over to Sean here from Gibson, but I'm available for any questions. And we have a huge model and a lot of materials to talk about.
Well, we do like models, but thank you.
We can get the model here.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Sean Moan. I'm with Gibson Transportation Consulting, and I'm here to give a sort of a general overview of the TDM plan that we've prepared as part of this project. Our firm was hired to work closely with the applicant and with city staff to prepare a TDM program that would essentially support the findings for the variance findings in the zoning ordinance by providing a plan that exceeded the TDM requirements in the municipal code. What we're trying to do with this TDM program is provide a comprehensive program that will allow the elements to work with each other, not just to address sort of the to and from office trip, but also just the unanticipated daily trips that the project that employees and visitors of the project might not anticipate. We wanted to do this to encourage maximum flexibility and maximum participation. Some of the elements, the major elements that we put together for these purposes was a TDM plan management program, a designated TDM coordinator on site, a transportation information center for centralized information, an internal TDM website for perhaps remote or mobile information, an employee orientation program, and a monitoring and participation application technology. As alluded to earlier, probably the most robust piece of this program is the transportation stipend or cash out program. What we wanted to do there was offer market rate plus 15% to allow employees to pursue other modes of transportation to and from work and while they're at work in case they needed an emergency trip. Straight cash out is always an option. Take the cash, get to work however you want. We also have the option of 100% easy transit passes that the employee would make available, so the employer would make available, so the employee wouldn't have to go out and pursue that piece of the program on our own. Sort of a one-stop shopping. Rideshare programs, bicycling, walking, Uber Pool, and Lyft Line were some of the things that we heard would be critical to the success of this program. And Zipcar, the applicant is committed to opening a Zipcar account that would allow flexibility throughout the day for a quick trip, an unanticipated meeting, that type of thing, sort of to offset the argument that, well, what if I need my car in the middle of the day? Again, we really wanted to try to address every possible trip from the outset. Some of the other elements that we're going to pursue aggressively with this plan are bicycle enhancements, 6 company bicycles, a bicycle, and that number will increase based on demand. If the applicant finds that there is a more demand for those, they'll be increased accordingly. Bicycle education program, critical to encourage participation. A bicycle engagement program, also critical to fostering a bicycle culture within the company. Bicycle match program. That is where you find like-minded bicycle proponents in your neighborhood that you could then party up with to make the experience more enjoyable, and again, to encourage participation. 24 short-term and 12 long-term bicycle parking spaces, which I think exceeds what would be required normally. One of the things that we're also looking into, and this will be subject, of course, to review and approval, are 16 commemorative corner bicycle spaces for the public. And I know this will probably be something that's debated, but that is something that the applicant is open to pursuing if that would be approved, just as a public amenity. And there also is a Strava program, which is sort of an incentive tracking-based program that they'll enlist. Pedestrian enhancements, they're also pursuing walk match program and a Strava program for pedestrian activity, again, the incentivization. Rideshare enhancements, the applicant's going to take the following measures to encourage rideshare. Rideshare match programs within the company and within the local downtown area. Recognizing that some businesses in the area might not have the critical mass to have participation on their own. We're going to sort of open up their own rideshare match, bike match, walk match to those interested parties that make sense within the downtown community. Preferred parking for rideshare. This would be sort of a monthly rotated feature. So if you do rideshare, they'll designate a couple parking spaces on site for rideshare participants, and that will rotate monthly. Other incentives will be given to the rideshare patrons that are parking off-site. One electric vehicle or hybrid company car. Again, this is in the same vein of a Zipcar for emergencies. It's a dedicated company car for emergency situations or quick trips throughout the day. We thought that would be an important feature if something needed to be done right away. And guaranteed ride home. The guaranteed ride home is if you're a transit user and your child gets sick or you get sick, there's an emergency, if you're working late and the rail has stopped running, the company will provide a guaranteed ride home for you, so you don't have to have that fear in the back of your mind that I just need my car because of that 1% chance something goes wrong. They'll provide that opportunity to get you to either your child or home. Emergency transportation is part of that discussion. Again, the guaranteed ride home, Uber or Lyft vehicle could be an option for that, Zipcar. The company car, if you were sick, obviously, you couldn't drive home yourself, but you could enlist a coworker to take you to the hospital or help you with that trip. Zipcar, again, you could enlist somebody to help you with that trip by driving you where you needed to go. Parking space management, that's going to be critical. I know there's concern about the on-site parking supply that's been raised several times.
Thank you, Mr. Munn. You can address this during your questions, I think. Commissioners, questions of the applicant? Commissioner Anderson, you must have a question. This is typically the time we ask the applicant questions, but please, Commissioner Newbold.
Of the transportation guy.
That's Mr. Munn, I believe, from Gibson.
So wait, I'm sorry. I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. Did you say that they're thinking of rotating the rideshare parking spaces monthly?
Well, there's a limited on-site parking supply.
I got that.
To designate 2 preferred parking spaces for participants in the program is an incentive for, if they have multiple participants, it's sort of a lottery situation where you may be awarded the on-site parking space for that month.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay, thank
And
you. I understand now.
Okay.
And then did you say bikes? Or bikes in the commemorative corner?
The-
Like,
Works.
what is that?
Yeah.
Please. Oh, and the model's made its appearance. Excellent.
Are those commemorative bikes in the model?
No, it's we were planning to. Is it not on?
No, it's fine. You
It's
speak
fine.
We
into
were
it.
planning to designate a portion of the site at corner
Yes.
for the post office, but that also happens to be the very public corner where bike racks could be put. So the idea we're floating around is maybe we can use this public corner to put some bike racks and do some artwork that can put plaques on the bike racks that would commemorate the post office
I
and
gotcha.
use it as
Okay,
that. So
thank you.
It's a new word we
Thank
just
you.
made up today.
Okay. And did you say that you were going to have a station guy again?
Mr.
One
Munn.
spot.
That's Mr. Munn. Sean. Yeah.
Sean,
It's Sean.
did you say there was going to be one spot reserved for a car that people had access
Yeah,
to?
there would be a dedicated spot for a company car.
Why
that
wouldn't
would
people
be-
just use Uber for a car just that would sit there?
They could. We were providing that as a potential option if the commission felt that that would be better served by just leaving that space open. It could be something that could
Okay,
be discussed
thank you.
and altered.
Other questions? Commissioner Fonda Bernardi.
Yeah, when I met with the design team, we did talk about trying to add some parking space, and we discussed different ways of doing that. And we got a letter saying that it couldn't be done, that there was no way to add parking. And I would like to challenge that and say that if we were to add parking along the alley, we would lose about 5 to 7% of our building, depending how you calculate the square foot of the building. But we would add basically about 12 spaces, and we would take away 8 spaces that would be, quote, required, and we would then have 20 new spaces that you would add to your 23 that you have. And now you're talking business. You're within 3 or 4 spaces of what you need. And I'm wondering, is there any reason either the design team or you did not pursue what would be the logical solution?
I'll leave that to the architect.
Yeah.
So, Commissioner Maher, this is a sketch that shows 2 options that we studied. One was to, I don't know if I can, to maybe reduce these 2 parking spaces as you suggested and perhaps bring that space from the other side. That does give us 1 extra space. Offices are code compliant, so if we are open to some variance on that.
No, what I'm saying is you're going for a variance anyway, so you have a fair amount of maneuverability.
Sure.
What I was talking, if you look at your section drawing, and you can see the story right away, I'm talking about taking essentially the area that was the loading dock that had rows of
Right.
mail trucks at one time.
Right.
Those same mail trucks could easily be replaced by your parking needs, and you would still have 2 floors over that, and a little bit of that space would be still in the enclosed building, and you would have 12 new spaces minus the 8 that you wouldn't have to provide. And if for some reason you didn't go down that road, 5 to 7% reduction in
Right.
your square footage, of your usable square footage. The reason I raise this is I like the way you're using the basement. The basement is really important, but when you add the basement and the new area and the building on grade, you're up to around 40,000 square feet, which would be, give or take 138 cars or whatever that is, and we're only pointing 48. So you're not really just short the difference between 28 and 27 or however many you have. Potentially you're much shorter. So I'm kind of interested in getting you
Sure.
there.
No, I
And-
get the question. One of the reasons it's not losing just the ground floor, but also the basement, because the basement is higher up than the alley grade area. So the reason the loading dock worked because it was higher up.
No, but you're not getting my
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
You are rebuilding that whole basement underneath the loading dock. It's a brand new object. You get to set the height of that thing. So it's not like you're destroying the fabric of the building or anything. You would just be able to set that at whatever height works for you. And what I'm saying is that this would be, quote, the logical solution. In addition, it would keep that feeling that there was an open space under this building, under this loading dock canopy. That, again, I'm not trying to design your building. I'm just saying, why didn't you go down the obvious path, because there was no basement below it, and you were doing all this work above it, and you were giving us a perfect 19-foot bay. You could put 2 cars in each bay and go home.
Right. So in this section drawing again, I actually absolutely get your question. This is the existing loading dock, right, where the canopy comes out, and roughly that line is this line around here. This is the edge of the canopy. I'm sorry. So if you're saying can this rectangle be converted to the parking?
It takes one bay over is what I'm saying.
Right, so it would be more of that. The short answer is that would take 2 floors, the current proposed basement and the proposed ground floor, out of the mix, and that just didn't work for the program.
Well, I'm not sure it would, because look at the floor that's down below. That floor could benefit going deeper, so it would line up with the viewing room, the theater. I guess what I'm saying is, it sounds like you didn't go down a road that was like sort of staring you in the face. And again, I'm not being critical. I'm asking a question of, you knew parking was going to be the beast that we had to slay here. And there it is waiting. It's like sitting there. All you had to do was reach over and grab it. And what happened?
Right, and I mean, that is exactly in the floor plan, that these would be the 2 bays across. The short answer, again, is that we couldn't fit the entire program in the 32 feet height limit and this basement underneath. Because
Cars are only 7 feet tall. You have bigger spare floor-to-floor heights than 7 feet, so...
Well, but we would have to step the floor. So if we are at the basement level, the screening room is ADA accessible at the upper level, and the seats below are not. But if we drop the back portion lower, then we would have to figure out how to connect the basement lower floor out to that one, with more ramps and ADA accessible issue if we drop the basement and the new addition. Yes, it was. We looked at it, didn't quite work.
Sage, can I also respond?
Sure.
I mean, also Commissioner Fresco. I mean,
it's Commissioner Fonda-Bernardi.
Yeah, it's hard, easy to make.
Yeah, easy mistake. Commissioner Fonda-Bernardi. We don't feel that, given the minor floor area we're adding less than 15,000 net square feet. To reduce that further is a significant hardship on this project. The owner's investing a lot of money into the rehabilitation of this project. By our estimation, over $12 million. And to reduce that floor area further, we think is a hardship that's not...
I'm talking about 2,500 square feet of your 42,000 square feet. So we're talking less than 5 to 7%. I'm not sure
But
that's...
the addition, it's 14,000, it's less than 15,000 square feet.
Right. So you lose 17% of your addition, but you gain something that is useful. You gain covered parking. You gain a historical alignment with what was there before. There's some value to this. It's not just a loss. So...
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Other commissioners at this stage? You will have a chance later on. We seem to have no more questions at this stage. We will return to those. So it's now time for the public comment. The first people to comment, Nancy Kaufman, Hani Iskander, and John Burley, followed by Ashley Nindick, from what I can see. So if you'd like to line up on this side. Please, you come and speak, and the other people would like to come and line up here so that we can move along. Please.
Hi, I'm Nancy Kaufman, and I've lived in Santa Monica for 40 years. Most people know me because I owned a store called Nana that's opened in 1976 on Broadway. The first store was at 2nd and Santa Monica. That building was torn down. We moved to Broadway between 2nd and Ocean. The entire block was torn down. And then we consequently moved to 7th in Santa Monica into a building that was later taken to expand the post office. So after that, we moved to what became the 3rd Street Promenade, where we stayed for about 10 years. So during this time that I was here, obviously I saw a lot of growth and a lot of change in the city. I am actually very excited as a small business owner now to have someone like Skydance move in, because I think they'd be a good neighbor. They're young, creative employees, and they probably will walk to lunch. They probably will go shopping, and so they will give back to the community, and I think that's really important. I've always been in full support of the slow growth movement. In other words, reusing pre-existing buildings and hoping to integrate them into the future. And as you can see, during my lifetime here, that was not really something that was happening very much. So I'm very excited about the fact that they're going to be able to convert one of the gems of our city into something that's really wonderful, I think. I'm most impressed with the fact that they are not going to the height limit of the downtown area. And I think that's really, really nice for the neighbors that are down there. It's going to be around the same height as the pre-existing post office, and I just think that's nice, instead of these big buildings that are going in and the development projects that are happening all over the place. I think it's a real nice way to preserve the past and also give us the future, and I'm excited about that. I also think with the push to get the movie industry back into the community, to have an independent, young group of vibrant, successful movie people in our city is going to be something that's going to lend a perfect fit to not only the past of the old post office, but also make our community more interesting. Right now, I think with housing being as expensive as it is, et cetera, we're losing some of that creative portion of the city that we had in the years past. So, in other words, I urge you to adopt the city staff's recommendations and grant Skydance the development review, permit, and variance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Iskander left. Is Mr. Burley in the room? Mr. Burley, it's your turn to speak. Yes. And then Ashley, Catherine Morrison, and Chris Strong. So if you would mind lining up. Mr. Burley.
Good evening. Good evening, Director Martin, Chair McKinnon, Planning Commissioners. John Burley, I'm a current Landmarks Commissioner, and at our last meeting, the Commission appointed me to speak before you this evening, and I don't think that was because of I possess some enthusiasm for this project that they don't. I can say that the Commission has great enthusiasm for this project. It may be that they thought I could be more articulate. I'm not sure about that. Maybe we'll see. But in the over 12 years that I have been on the Landmarks Commission, myself and my colleagues have worked very hard to incentivize the adaptive reuse of our historic resources. And I believe that this may serve as a excellent starting point for looking at some of the challenges that historic resources in our city have. One of those great challenges is parking. And this may be the beginning of a process whereby you as a commission that oversee these important issues begin to understand how to strike a balance between the value of the resource and accommodating traffic. And I think that if the individuals, those that come along to consider adaptively reusing our historic buildings and demonstrate a great effort to accommodate or to work around the difficulties that they have, such as parking, that you'll start to develop a matter of policy on how to treat historic buildings when they encounter these challenges. I believe that this applicant is doing an excellent job of addressing most of the issues associated with the adaptive reuse of this incredibly important building in Santa Monica, its rehabilitation, its restoration, as well as a very modest addition. And it's impressive to see such a modest addition. One doesn't often see such restraint when it's not required. But perhaps I can also speak to the issue of the fence. I believe that from the very beginning, the idea of proposing a fence in front of this building was very, I think, in many respects abhorrent to many people. We had a number of individuals from the community speak before the commission the first time a fence was proposed, and at that time the fence was, I think, about 8 feet tall. And we had suggested that there be more consideration of whether or not a fence was necessary, and that at the very least that the fence's height be reduced. I can speak personally in the time that I've been in the post office working with the applicant, or at least discussing their ideas. Over a handful of times I've been in the building, people have come to the building wanting to do post office business. And part of the reason for that is not so much that people remember the building as a post office, but because it's etched in the facade of the building, United States Post Office. So when you think of this building becoming a private use, and that use not necessarily being so clear to the public since it says United States Post Office, I would think, and this is something that I've come to understand, they're going to be faced with a lot of people banging on the door wanting to get in because they are there to conduct postal business. Well, it made more and more sense. The fence made considerably more sense after experiencing that on a number of occasions. In fact, the last time I was there and we were meeting in the lobby, there's a construction fence in front of the building, and the construction fence was open at the time, and someone came in wanting to mail some letters. So, I mean, even with the construction fence in front, there was still a desire to use the building in its original intent, and that's what we're moving beyond at this point. So we did review a certificate of appropriateness for a fence, which we felt had been sufficiently modified to meet what we felt were appropriate standards for providing what a private use is going to require, as well as having the fence be sufficiently low enough to not be an imposition, not appear as though it's meant to purposefully keep you away. And so, perhaps, that offers some assistance as to the reasoning that the Landmarks Commission had relative to the fence. But I do want to say that we endorse this project, and I hope that you will approve the recommendations of staff for the development review permit, and especially take very significant steps in understanding how to overcome specific challenges that historic buildings have, because you're going to see more of them. They're going to continue to come, and they're going to come with any number of unique issues, and parking is going to be probably the greatest challenge. And so I think this is an opportunity for you to think creatively and innovatively along with the applicant in a means to develop a way for these buildings to be celebrated as well as used. So.
Thank you, Mr. Burley. I'm sure Commissioner Fresco has what would be called a friendly question.
I do. As a Landmarks Commissioner, you review many different kinds of projects from many angles, often instead of the ARB or things that relate to other planning issues in a unique way that has to do with the landmark. I recall, for example, when, as a Landmarks Commissioner, I would have to review signage or something for a project, staff would always fill us in on all of the rules that other commissions would use to evaluate that. And we would take that into consideration and then step back and decide if that was an important thing to honor or if we needed to bend that for the landmark. And what I would like to know from you is, did you guys ever get included in the conversation that's such a big part of downtown right now about active commercial street fronts and the way that fence would relate to the public walking by and the fact that Arizona is a boulevard and so forth.
Yes, we did actually, and I think that I can speak for my colleagues in saying that early on there wasn't a lot of enthusiasm for the idea of a fence, and a lot of that has to do with the precedent of this being such a public corner and such a public place, and the community remembers the post office as being this welcoming. As it was meant to be welcoming, but over time, and especially from experiences of meeting in the lobby, it's no longer a post office, but people still wanting to buy stamps or mail letters or packages. That continued to happen, and it became evident that unless the use of that building allowed that lobby to have some kind of public access so that these situations could very easily be handled, it really made sense to help, because there is etched in the building, it says United States Post Office. We don't want that taken down. We don't want that covered over. And so that creates some confusion. This is a unique case. You're not going to find this with probably any other, well, I shouldn't say that. There may be other historic buildings that have signage on them that are valuable and worth keeping. But in this case, it really became very evident that this was a problem, and it was one that was going to be difficult for a private use, especially an entertainment use, to overcome.
So did you guys ever discuss the fact that in general, at least in residential neighborhoods, a 42-inch fence is the size that is considered neighbor-friendly and pedestrian-friendly? And was there a reason why you landed at 5 feet and not at that kind of standard acceptable
We didn't
neighbor-friendly
discuss
height?
a residential application or a consideration of a residential consideration.
Okay.
But the applicant did, and I can say this very confidently, that this applicant has listened to, and I think you'll find this to be the case as well, this applicant has listened to the comments that have come from my colleagues, and they have responded very diligently and very thoughtfully to those. There's been a considerable amount of movement based on comments that have been made relative to many different components to the design, but the fence is a really excellent example because it started out at 8 feet and ended up at 5. And at that point, the commission, I think, felt as though the applicant had done sufficient work in satisfying what we felt was a more friendly approach to, basically creating that little bit of separation that I believe is required.
So you felt it was a sufficient compromise?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Kennedy.
I was wondering if the commission also considered that while it is a concern that people would enter the confines of the property, they wouldn't get into the building because I assume the doors would be locked, you'd have to be buzzed in, it would be a company. I can't say for sure, but if I were to just walk up to IMAX, I don't know if I'd get in, but the receptionist might buzz me in to the front door. I don't know if it's, if you can walk into the lobby and that's a business decision, but did you discuss that as when weighing the different options, did you consider that?
I don't believe it's not my understanding, or at least I don't believe that the building lobby area is being used as a lobby or a reception area. That the organization of the building internally is very different from that. So what is the traditional front door of the post office today will not be the front door of this building. So
okay, so then I'll ask the applicant if they plan on having that locked at all times, which it seems like if they're not having a receptionist there would be almost a guarantee.
I can only speak
Sure.
to what
okay.
we were.
And then, of course, what works in other cities doesn't necessarily work everywhere, or every project has its own specific features. I understand that. But did the commission at all think about what happens in a scenario like this in other cities? There are individuals who purchase firehouses in other cities and live in them, and they say 1812 etched into the side, firehouse number 9 or whatever, or a townhome may once have been part of an Nabisco factory, and it says Nabisco over the door, but you can't get Peak Freens there. So so in that regard, did you consider at all those how over time either that might lessen, or the fact that in other cities, up and down major boulevards in some of the most prominent cities all over the world, a landmark doesn't, or a private business doesn't necessarily have that barrier from the public?
Well,
If I may make a small clarification, if I'm sorry to interrupt, but if I may, really the Landmarks Commission jurisdiction doesn't have to do with use. It really does have to do with design. And so the reason why the fence was brought to the Landmarks Commission was for determination of whether or not it was appropriate under their standards for a certificate of appropriateness. So they really were limited with respect to what their purview is, and that was the criteria that they used to evaluate the fence.
Thank you.
But if I may say,
yes.
I think that when you compare a post office to business use like a cookie factory or even a firehouse, you're talking about a very different type of traffic. Someone might run into the firehouse saying, we need you to get down to this fire, but that might happen once every so often. People go to the post office every day, and in this community, they use that building significantly. And so I think that while we're sad that it's no longer our main post office, I think we're very excited that it is being very sensitively given a new life. And so in our evaluation of the need for a fence, it specifically had to do with the frequency of activity that building has enjoyed over its 80 some odd years of existence, and how that was in conflict with a private use. And so we felt it was appropriate. And I can tell you that, and I will speak personally when I say this, I didn't feel good about the fence, and I had great reservations about it, but it was the times that I spent there seeing that there continued to be, even after the construction fence was up, there still were people coming to do postal business. For me, I just said, man, that's just going to be very difficult to manage over time. They're going to be constantly having people banging on the door wanting to get in. Why is the door locked?
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Miller. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our next speaker, Ashley.
Commissioners, my name is Ashley Nendick, and I am the finance manager at Skydance. I think it's worth saying that every member of the Skydance family shares certain values, working hard to create the best product we can, living sustainably and having our office function sustainably, and really trying to become a part of the community we exist in. I think it's fair to say that we're proud to be a part of Santa Monica, and we're proud to contribute to Santa Monica's creative scene. I personally have lived in Santa Monica for almost 2 years now. I moved here first off to avoid the commute of the South Bay. And secondly, I grew up visiting Santa Monica and my aunt here, and something that always kind of stuck with me is the community feel. You can walk most places. You can interact with your neighbors in a friendly manner. You know the business owners. It's just a very quaint community feel. The reality of living in Santa Monica has met all my expectations, luckily. I also want to point out that one of the main draws to Santa Monica is the downtown. The Wednesday farmers markets, the Saturday farmers markets, the library, the promenade, obviously. There's so many small businesses as well that really contribute to this kind of friendly, quaint feeling like I referenced before. Also, it's truly walkable. I've walked to the office a couple times where we currently are. I don't think it's necessarily an as safe an area, so I would expect to walk to work or bike most days because it's convenient, a nice walk, enjoying Santa Monica and all it has to offer. When Skydance set its sight on relocating to the historical post office building and adding the proposed creative space, we all at the company were really excited to join kind of more of the downtown community, whether it's eating lunch in Santa Monica every day, whether it's running to the promenade to run pretty much any errand you could think of. You can see a movie, you can, walk to the ocean if you want to, and just overall doing our work in a safe and welcoming environment. From the restoration of the iconic post office building to the innovative and creative resources we'll bring to the building, Skydance, I think it's fair to say, will contribute tremendously to the vitality of downtown. And I sincerely hope that you will adopt the recommendations made by your staff this evening. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Catherine Morrison. And then following will be Chris Strong, Carol Lemline, and Mr. Rubin. Please.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Catherine Morrison. I'm speaking in support of the recommendations made in the staff report, which I hope you will support tonight. In the interest of full disclosure, I am a coordinator in the television department at Skydance Media and have been with the company for nearly 3 years. Although I'm an employee of the firm whose proposal is before you this evening, I wish to speak to you tonight as a resident of Santa Monica. As an avid walker, I love downtown Santa Monica. The area features such an interesting range of buildings, both old and new, which are home to great shops, restaurants, businesses, and places to live. Between this and the beautiful views of the Santa Monica Bay, I was so excited to make Santa Monica my home. One of downtown's older structures is the historic post office building. While it was sad to see such an iconic Santa Monica building close, imagine my surprise to learn that it would soon be the future home of the company that I just happened to work for. I was then, and still am today, incredibly excited that I will be working at a location that is so significant to the city and its residents. I believe the entire downtown community will reap the benefits of a beautifully and faithfully restored post office. The additional workspace will make doing business at the location possible and will bring tax revenues to the city. A fresh creative use will come to the corner. Skydance employees will also be able to take advantage of all that downtown has to offer, enjoying the sea breezes, patronizing cafes and shops during lunch hour or after work, and meeting up with friends and colleagues. In addition, I currently live within walking distance of the new location, and it is my intention to take advantage of the opportunity to walk to the office. I am very excited about the prospect of leaving my car at home and would also feel safe doing so. Lastly, the bicycle services that Skydance will make available to its employees will help enhance the healthy and convenient environment of our downtown. I respectfully ask you to grant the applicant's development review permit and help bring a historic corner back to life. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Strong.
Good evening. My name is Chris Strong, and I'm a property manager here in Santa Monica, and I'm here on behalf of my boss to read a letter on as he is not able to attend due to personal reasons. He states, Dear Chair McKinnon and Commissioners, my name is Steve Kofsky. I am with Remote Control Productions, a film score company I run with my business partner, composer Hans Zimmer. We're based here in Santa Monica on 14th Street, where we provide music services for films, television, and video games. We're one of the dozens of entertainment firms, large and small, that call Santa Monica home. The concentration of entertainment-related firms within a mile or two of one another creates tremendous synergy. One of those firms is the applicant Skydance Media. We've teamed up with Skydance on a number of projects, and they're a great company. Skydance wants to relocate its offices from Lincoln Boulevard to downtown Santa Monica, and I think it's a very good idea. I urge you to approve the development review permit and greenlight the proposed project at 1248 5th Street. Skydance's imaginative plan for adaptive reuse of Santa Monica's famous WPA modern post office and the development of additional creative space makes sense on a lot of levels. Santa Monica takes its architecture and cultural heritage seriously, and Skydance has the vision and resources to create a statement. Approval of the DRP will enable Skydance to restore and repurpose the former post office, creating a really beautiful corner in downtown Santa Monica that everybody will love. The additional 3 stories of the creative space being proposed by Skydance are well thought out and well designed. They have managed to conceive the space to fit within the existing 32 feet height limit. The additional square footage will give Skydance the room it needs to produce films, television, shows, and games under one roof. The project will result in a unique blending of old and new, and most importantly, will bring a major production entity and its great staff into the heart of the downtown area, which benefits everyone.
Again, I urge you to grant the DRP so that Skydance can make this vision a reality. Thanks for your time and consideration. Sincerely, Steve Kofsky. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Limline, followed by Jerry Rubin, and then Carl Hansen.
I'm Carol Limline, speaking on behalf of the board of the Santa Monica Conservancy. Much as we would have preferred that the main post office was still located in its historic building, we are where we are and we support the building's adaptive reuse. We have attended several meetings with the project team since August last year and have given our feedback as the plans developed and seen the response to our recommendations. We have been represented at each of the informal and formal reviews of the Landmark Commission, and we are comfortable with the direction the design is taking and its adherence to the Secretary of the Interior standards. I'd like to add to Commissioner Burley's comments about the fence that in the time that the plan, it has not only gotten shorter, but it has become much lighter in color, much more blended with the color of the building so that it's not going to stand out as it had before, and I consider it quite reasonably transparent in terms of its potential interference with the visibility of the building. We support the parking variances as being entirely appropriate, recognizing that the building as built had no parking, that the relevant codes in the city encourage the waiver of parking requirements when a landmark building is being revitalized or adaptively reused, and that is necessary to support the program in the building. And finally, we find that the extensive TDM policy is being implemented to minimize any negative effects of that. We look forward to participating in the Certificate of Appropriateness hearing at the Landmarks Commission and in seeing this important building restored and returned to an active use after being closed by the post office almost 3 years ago. I should also note that we have offered to provide periodic tours of the site to commemorate and educate the public about the very interesting history of the building. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jerry?
Thank you very, very much, Chair McKinnon and Commissioners. Jerry Rubin, Santa Monica. Firstly, I'd like to thank our city staff, the Landmarks Commission, the applicant, Skydance, that's a great name, by the way, and the Santa Monica Conservancy. I must say, I, along with a lot of people, are still missing the convenience of our longtime downtown post office, but I was over at the other one the other day, and it was okay. I do think the creative office is a very positive use for that area. I am in favor of the parking variance, but I do think the TDM plan should be very comprehensive. Got the light rail coming, a lot of the big blue bus there, bike stuff. I think it'll be fine. Glad the street trees are remaining. I do want to support some adequate lighting there and in the alleyway and everywhere. But I think the design is really, really nice. I'm sure that's always a matter of opinion, whether this should be darker or contrast the landmark building or complement it. And I think it's good that the landmark building's standing out on its own and the other buildings are standing out on their own, but as a whole, yeah, I think it's very well designed. In my unprofessional opinion, I'm not an architect. The fence thing, I think it's good. It's a private use. It's not 8 feet tall, it's 5 feet tall, it's a foot lower than me. And as Carol Limline said, a lot of things were done to color and the way it's coming in, but I don't see that as a bad thing, having a fence area there. I do want to respect the city staff's request to have more time to review the applicant's letter. It's a fair thing, it's a fair request, and I think that should be supported as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rubin. Carl Hansen.
Good evening, Commissioners. Carl Hansen, Director of Government Affairs for the Santa Monica Chamber of Commerce. I'm here tonight to express the Chamber's support for the adaptive reuse and redevelopment of the post office site by Skydance. I wanted to touch on a few points from the letter we submitted earlier to you this week. This vacant building is an important site in our downtown across from the Holiday Ice Rink and future Plaza at Santa Monica. The city is fortunate to have Skydance as the owner-operator of this landmark property. The capital investment and infrastructure improvements that they will provide will make this WPA building extraordinary. Given the site's significant constraints as a designated landmark, we believe that the adaptive reuse of this location is incredibly important for our downtown. Building a downtown building as creative office by a media production company represents an ideal project. It's consistent with the Luce and embodies the sustainable creative architecture and adaptive reuse of historic buildings that will preserve our rich architectural history while taking downtown Santa Monica into the future. The project team has shown striking creativity by proposing to remove the existing roof and adding a partial third floor above the existing building while limiting the rest of their addition to the basement and the alley. The result is a modest scale addition that exhibits the sensitivity required for the expansion of a landmark building. I wanted to talk about the TDM a bit as well. This was something that was incredibly important to the chamber. I know the parking concern came up earlier. I think the consensus in the planning world around reducing traffic and addressing climate change, reducing driving, is aggressive TDM and reduced parking. If you continue to have parking minimums, you're going to continue to have parking. And I think the applicant has an awesome proposal. I think parking cash out is amazing. I think what they offered is more than I would have expected. I would be happy to take an offer like that, especially because I don't drive to work. But I expect many people that work in the entertainment industry will choose to live nearby or take the expo, take their bike on the expo, take their bike in, have the opportunity to shower at work. I think that's splendid. Like Commissioner Newbold, it's on my walk to the farmer's market, and it's been an eyesore for a few years. People are worried about the fence. But the fence that's up there now is the ugliest thing I've ever seen. It's like a half fallen over a chain link fence that's quite high. And I'm really looking forward to this. I think it's an awesome company. I think it's going to energize the downtown. The Chamber's excited about having a good business here in an industry that we support. We've worked closely with Santa Monica College on workforce development, getting students to be trained in entertainment and technology so that they can enter the kind of thriving new market that the Santa Monica workforce provides. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hansen. Commissioners, we've got one late chit. I think we should hear it. The question is whether it's 1 minute or 3 minutes. Thoughts?
I think this is a unique situation, and I think we should let the person speak for 3 minutes.
Hearing no one else, 3 minutes. Former Mayor Feinstein, who appears to have just ridden his bike here.
He did, because I was just relaxing at home watching the Planning Commission, and I have,
as you should do,
such deep respect for our Landmarks Commission and for Commissioner Burley, but I was so upset by what I heard that I couldn't let it stand without coming down. The idea that because the structure says U.S. Post Office means that we have to change our standards because they've chosen to privatize a historically, publicly open use, I find incredibly offensive. It said U.S. Post Office when they bought it. It wasn't a surprise, like, oh my God, look what's up there. People are walking up to the building. When you're considering a use for what was a long-standing public asset to our community like that, you don't go in saying, I'm going to privatize it and ask the community to abandon its architectural and cultural standards. The camel's nose under the tent. You don't do that. It's not okay. But we all say, oh, they invested in the building and they're spending so much money for their privatized use that, oh, we have to roll over and just let them do it. And then they have very good representation in this town, so they've gone to the Landmarks Commission and worn down the commission by having a ridiculous 8-foot fence where I was at that meeting originally, and now it's 5 feet and it's nicer. So everybody buys in, but because by comparison, we're getting fleeced by our standards here. It's not okay. And I think you found a really good hole in the law, Ms. Fresco, about how we're now not able to look at the fences here. I think you're all familiar with my concerns about when staff interprets that there's not enough sufficient review for a project when there should be a larger context. This is, it's just like we're all sleepwalking through this. The symbolism of any fence on a building that represented the public investment of the 1930s to bring this country out of a depression. It's not okay that, I can see through it better and it's nicer architecturally. The symbolism of walling off something that represented the major transition of this country from where we were in the 1930s, and given the dynamics of some of our presidential campaign, how inappropriate such a move in our community would be. So, I only started watching it in the middle of your public hearing. I don't know all of what you can do, but I know you might be able to continue it because you didn't get enough information from staff. But I just did not want this to go without it being on the public record that people find this move by moving into a building and after the fact saying this public access in the past is an impediment to our current use. At the Landmarks Commission, they said, a bunch of celebrities are going to be there, and therefore we need fences because all these poor celebrities are going to be hounded by gawkers. So the economic class of the user determines what we do with the structure? Really? Is that what Santa Monica is about? So that's why I rode my bike down here and was out of breath when I got here. Thanks for hearing me. I appreciate it. I appreciate every meeting when you call for the 3 minutes. I think that's cool.
Thank you.
People notice it.
Thank you. We have a question from Commissioner Kennedy.
Our commissioner was regarding sometime practices in other cities where firehouses, former factories, or even post offices are adaptively reused, and don't, at least in examples that I've done in my research, indicate that fences aren't always used to block either the entire property or the entrance. So I was just wondering if you have any experience with recognizing that as well, either in the community here or in our nearby region?
When I did my op-ed for the Daily Press on this months ago, when I saw it at Landmarks Commission, I ended up connecting with somebody who had a national website about saving the post offices all over the country, and I got into an online discussion with them, and they had given me, yes, they had seen other places. I don't have that with me, but they had seen what you had said, elsewhere. And of course, that just, you move in with the use that fits with public use, and you don't have to have a fence.
Great.
Can I ask you another question? In your testimony tonight, you mentioned interpretations, and I wanted to know if you had any memory or of the interpretation procedure. If there's a need for an interpretation as something that the Planning Commission has discovered, it can be interpreted, but I believe it's in writing, and then there's a 14-day review.
Sure.
Do you remember?
I end up remembering more times when it came to closed session and we had to fight over it there. But I would certainly take the option now to get, as I thought the points raised before were really worth taking a little bit of extra time to get some deep thought in the legal department.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Commissioners, I'd actually quite like to take a 5-minute break at this stage. Might stretch to 10, and then when we come back, the applicant will get to respond, and we'll get to ask questions of the applicant and the staff, and then move forward. So we'll just take 10 minutes at this stage. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, commissioners, we might start again. Missing Commissioner Newbold. We will resume in 1 minute. Well, I'm sure Commissioner Newbold will understand if we get going. Mr. Kutcher, would you like to, you have 3 minutes now to present some thoughts based on the public comment, and then other commissioners will probably have something to ask you about.
Thank you, Chair. We appreciated hearing the public testimony. I want to quickly give you a couple of thoughts about the further thoughts about the fence issue. We didn't change any standards. The fence was within code, but more importantly, the fence decision is a final binding decision. It can't be, in legal terms, collaterally attacked. It's a controlling decision, and it's not before you. And appreciate the enthusiasm and interest over that. We would like to focus on the application, which is the addition to the building, and move on from the fence. You're free to ask questions about it, but that's our technical legal position is it's a final binding decision. I'm going to have Mr. Biddle respond in part to the question from Mr. Fonda Bernardi, because we want to point out the constraints we have with respect to the program needs of the addition.
Good evening. Could
you just tell us who you are?
I'm sorry.
Who
My
you
name
work
is
for?
Tony Biddle. I'm the project manager for the client.
Great.
Because of the landmark constraints, we were very limited as to where we could build. When we started the process, the client's program for what he needs for his business, his operation, was actually a lot greater than what we could build. So we gradually whittled it back to fit within the 48,000 square feet. So to lose a couple of thousand square feet would really impact them. There would be things that they would need to then find other locations for. The intent was to get everything in one building as their home. So we did look at all options for increasing parking supply. Building less was not an option for us.
Okay. That's the comment. So, Commissioner Parry, I noticed your light on. Would you like to start the questions to the applicant?
Yeah, I was hoping the applicant could expand on or respond to the concerns raised in written correspondence on safety along the alley. I think you mentioned that you were looking at adding a mechanical gate.
Right, it would, I'm not sure how I can point to the model without
Don't worry, just speak, we'll figure
All
it
right.
out.
So maybe the next slide here, I can. Give me 1 second. So here, if you can see it, the intent is to have the fence continue and have the gate. And have a sliding gate. This is opened up sort of in this rendering, but the fence is this high, 8 feet high, and the gate continues all the way across. So the building is really secured from the alley on this side where the parking entrance is. And then for the rest of the building, the actual floor level is around 30 inches or so from the grade at the minimum. And it's solid for the bottom portion, and then fixed glass, no operable windows on that side. There's designs to have lighting on this part of the alley, so it'll be much brighter and safer than what it is currently with the loading dock. And then if we keep going towards the Arizona side, and I'll try and put up the other rendering. Here, the fence that is light in the background continues at 90 degrees and goes to the end of that wall. So this portion is also fenced off, And this open stairway is actually secured behind the fence. There's just an exit gate to get out. It appears from these renderings as if it may be open, but it's actually only the loading spaces and the transformer that's open, and the rest of the property is 100% secure. Plus, security is a big concern for Skydance, so they do have 24-hour security on premises throughout, and they plan to have the same contractor come over to the site as well.
Thank you. And I also have a question regarding your plans for providing off-site parking for occupant space. I understand from discussions outside of this meeting that the intent is to provide off-site parking.
That is correct. I'll speak for the applicant, but the challenge is because we are at least to construction year, 18 months of construction out. It's hard to secure the parking at this point, but it's full intent to do that. In fact, the current building is on Olympic and Lincoln Boulevard, and we actually did the renovation for them to move them from the Paramount lot to Santa Monica, closer to this, and they have a sufficient amount of parking there. One of the options that the applicant is looking at is perhaps continuing leasing some space in that building and using the parking to shuttle people over. There's many options that they are looking at right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other commissioners? Commissioner Kennedy? And then Commissioner Anderson.
I would like to know why you haven't provided a graphic rendering showing the design from the 5th Street viewpoint. I feel like you're hiding something.
No, I can pull it up right now, but that's a fair question. If you can.
Okay.
So did you have other questions, Commissioner Kennedy?
Yes, and I wanted to know, it was during public testimony, we talked about where the post office, where the original post office entrances were. Your plan is to have not a reception area there. So are those entrances, and will they be locked and only accessible with a key or key card at that time, or will they always be open and unlocked?
I'll answer the first question right now. This is a photograph of the existing building from the corner of 5th Street and Arizona, across the street. And this is the proposed building. The reason we haven't focused on it is nothing really changes except for the fence added. And the full-scale model shows that. I mean, the large-scale model shows that as well. We are doing is back, forth. In fact, it also shows that there are these planters that are currently obstructing how the building is viewed. And the fence, we worked very hard with the Landmarks Commission to make sure that the height of the fence is in proportion with those planters, and it's perceived the same way. So really, that's what the final design is. We took great pains to make sure that the addition is not visible from the street side, and the building would be cleaned up. The windows would be restored to their original conditions, because the windows that are currently in the building are newer ones. They're not operable. Our intent is to make them operable as they were intended to be before, with a dual glazed energy performing unit.
Can you toggle between the two views again?
Sure. Let me know when you're ready.
Yeah, toggle up at the few. Okay, thank you. Okay, and then about the old original post office entrances, or securing those entrances.
I'll pull up a floor plan if that's okay. So the proposal is for, this is the historic lobby space, which is purview to the city council at this point. The intent is to keep this door as the entry door to the premise. The handicap parking is added on the right side with the opening. And this portion, the right-hand portion, would act as a lobby space, and the left-hand, perhaps we're looking for best use for this, maybe a commissary for the employees and things like that. But again, the lobby is more of a different sense of a lobby for creative space. It's not the traditional high-rise office building where there's a security 24/7 out there.
So will you be purchasing will the doors have locks on them, and will they be locked, or will it be open for anybody to enter at any time?
They would have access control.
Access control, so key cards or something.
To that point also, because of the Landmarks parcel, we have a substantial granted setback on the Arizona side and the Fifth Street. The intent is to use that space for employees outside areas to encourage them to work. So having people just walk into that creates that hindrance.
Bowles can follow up on that.
I know you've been waiting.
I'm done.
I'm a little confused.
Sure.
The fence outside of on Fifth Street, it's a gate that people, will it be unlocked during the day so employees go in the gate and then they use their key card to get into the building? Or?
Right. So actually, this helps to get the time to explain the fence situation. This line here shows the fence. That's where we are turning back at the corners, coming in. And these two gates are as an homage to the existing entries where the existing entry gates are. So when you're standing outside, those would be very symmetrical. The gates would have access control to them. Gotcha. So it'll be either remotely open at certain times, or they'll have a camera and a buzzing function to get in from there, like any other entry compound.
Okay. And there's no picture of those gates?
Actually, there is. You bear with me for a minute.
Is it in our packet? Is there a page number I can?
Because we have so many different drawings in here submitted. This is the fence DRP package, which I can open up right now.
And actually, I'm not sure that the fence is actually before us tonight, but I'm actually.
But this helps understand. But this is the fence part.
So it's even all the way. It's all the same. That's all I needed to see.
But there is a substantial grade difference along the length of the building, and hence the 5 feet is the maximum height. It goes down to 4.3 at some points. It steps with the building.
Thank you so much.
Commissioner Anderson.
I don't have an architecture question.
All right.
I have a parking TDM related question. I guess I'm curious about whether there was any consideration about paying the in lieu fee. The program, paying into the in lieu fee program that the city has.
I clarify, the project's actually not in the in lieu fee area.
Yes. Because the in lieu fee area that we're operating in is still that
correct
area
still
more directly
Court.
Adjacent to
right.
3rd Street.
The way that the parking in lieu fee program is written is that with that entire area could expand, but that is not the case right now.
Okay. One of our standard TDM measures is to have unbundled parking, and I realize that this is an owner-occupant, but in anticipation of the fact that things change, is that an acceptable component of the TDM?
Well, yeah, I think that's fine. There's no, it's not in the foreseeable future. There'd be, other tenants, but we don't have an issue with that.
Okay, that'd be great.
That's a standard condition.
Yes, I think so. And then I guess related to that is I was surprised by the way the parking cash out program was described, especially since staff has worked so hard to kind of refine that. And I'm just curious that it doesn't seem to include any obligations on the part of the employee, that the owner's going to hand out these allowances, the cash out, and the employee can continue to drive. Like I don't.
No, the intention would be that there would be a commitment on the part of the employee program on primarily a monthly basis, but the project is also looking at developing a less restrictive daily option, and we're continuing to vet what that might be and what that proration of payment might be if someone wanted to participate in the program but was just limited to maybe 50% of the time for reasons beyond their control. We want to give them the flexibility to also participate and help reduce the overall parking demand and trip generation and congestion related to the project.
So,
if I can also piggyback on that, our proposed draft of condition 52C indicates that would offer to that $230 as a stipend to drivers who use a single occupancy car to work no more than an average of 1 day per week. So we're trying to constrain that.
Yeah. I'm assuming you're kind of familiar with the language that we've been seeing in the DAs. I mean, are you comfortable with something like that?
We were trying to, again, flexibility to catch as many people as possible, even if they're only doing it on a weekly basis, to try and get to a better point. But we're fine with whatever the standard conditions that the commission may want. Those, we don't have objection to that. We are trying to be responsive, and find the most effective ways to get there.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, honestly, I'm kind of going back and forth, because I think on the one hand, we want to provide incentives to people to use transit or alternative means of getting, but on the other hand, you want them to have some obligation to not be driving their car as well. So, okay, I appreciate that. I think those are my questions.
So I had a follow-up to that. Commissioner Fresco, did you want to? So primarily that cash out's a monthly process, and you're talking about some other way. Is there some other way we could incentivise people, maybe by paying them 5% of the total for not doing it on a daily basis up to 8 times, 10 times a month, to provide a bridge to the monthly program? I mean,
exactly.
I'm seeing this as a difficult customer in a sense, because everybody drives and they've all got private offices, and we have to somehow wean them away. And however we do it, it is acceptable. Now, is that a reasonable thing from your perspective?
That's what I was essentially alluding to. I don't want to break it down into terms of full-time participation, monthly, part-time participation, daily.
No, but I think something that encourages people to try it would be a useful step forward. So anyway, perhaps you can resolve that.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned 2 rideshare spaces as, rotated around. Why not think about having 4 rideshare spaces so that there's an encouragement for rideshare and people can park the car?
And I think with regard to dedication of spaces, if there was an adequate demand of proponents of that within the company, such as the same way with the bikes.
Isn't that what we're trying to get to here?
Right.
Right
but
off the
you
bat.
don't necessarily. I understand where you're coming from. I don't think the project would be opposed to looking at modifying the allocation of rideshare spaces based on that demand.
So one of the things that struck me, both in the letter that you wrote and also then the letter that Mr. Kutcher wrote to us, was that the words "if appropriate" kept appearing. Uber account such and such given to someone, comma, if appropriate. Who decides appropriate? Is that our call here in the city, or is it your call?
No,
I mean, that seemed to me to be open in the air.
And the language, that language was really meant to reflect that there may be some specific employees that would be precluded from participating in that particular element for a reason that the employer and the employee would agree upon jointly. Remote office working from home is one such thing. If it was felt that a person was working on a project collectively and it was really extremely inefficient for that employee to work from home, that would be a program element that they necessarily wouldn't be eligible for. So that's the language we had chosen to sort of indicate that a small portion of the employee population may be eliminated from participation in certain elements of the program, but not the program in it. Not the overarching TDM plan.
So last week we had a development application here, and that had extremely stringent AVR and trip cap measures as part of it, and some of it was to do with the penalisation if you don't meet it. Now, when I look through it, I don't see a consequence if you don't meet a lot of what we're aiming to do. So that seems to me an issue that we could be looking at, because financial incentives always work best. How do you see it?
I think financial incentives do work best, and
which includes penalties too. I mean,
which includes penalties and.
So that's an area yet to be discussed between the
is.
city and you guys.
It is,
okay.
it is, it
so
is.
There does seem to me to be a reasonable amount of discussion, although there seems broad agreement about exactly how this TDM is going to work between your applicant and the city, yet to be nailed down. Is that a fair characterization?
As far as any potential targets, as far as the reporting, I think what based on my experience, our client has been extremely open and aggressive with putting this plan together. Nearly every TDM element that we brought to the table, they were open to listening to, which is not the case with a lot of clients. They're committed committed to focusing on multimodal transportation, not only for themselves and the approval of this application, but just really as a cultural shift and a way to illustrate to the community that they're serious about this. To the extent, again, regarding targets and AVR numbers, we have not had that specific dialogue with city staff yet.
My final question was about the off-site parking, which seems to have been located in the building they're in at the moment, but may not be in 2 years' time.
Correct.
So how would that work? Would people drive there and they'd be shuttled? Or, I mean, the whole idea about having off-site parking is that it's an incentive to use public transport or walk, not that there's two sets of driving that will take place.
Right, and we're anticipating that there will still be a number of rideshare participants perhaps that need off-site parking because of the limited parking supply on site. The idea is to try to secure that off-site parking close enough that that last component of the home to office trip can be done on foot or on bicycle if a group of rideshare participants also bring their bikes to for that leg of the trip. As alluded to or discussed earlier, 18 months from now, there'll be a more definitive idea of where that off-site parking is located, but the intention is to stay as close as possible to the downtown area.
Thank you. I have no further questions of the applicant. Does anyone else? Commissioner Fresco?
I just have one question for Mr. Kutcher. In condition 67 about the water, you suggested that because it's a landmark parcel that you would be exempt from that. And I'm just wondering what the problem is in complying since they're all new bathrooms and it's an all new fountain that you're proposing, and why can't we make it really water?
The exemption is with respect to the water fountain feature outside, and the hope is to have that extend around part of the property in a runnel, and the water fountain feature itself complies, but when we add in the runnel, it exceeds the footage.
You know how I feel about runnels.
I know. A number of landmarks commissioners have been.
I feel like that's an inside joke. That we.
There's one out front.
Yes. Anyway, Mr. Kutcher.
So anyway, the leeway allows us the opportunity to have a runnel there, and so that's our hope.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Kutcher.
Thank you.
Commissioners, do you have any further questions of the planning department, people who've so patiently been sitting here? Commissioner Newbold.
I don't have a question, but I do want to apologize to Mr. Kutcher publicly. I teased him that he didn't contact me, but of course he did because I found an unopened email in my inbox. And sometimes I'm kind of casual and jokey, and it's very serious business, so I apologize.
I don't know what's worse, that you didn't get one or you didn't open it. All right, Commissioner Anderson. Commissioner Anderson.
I'm sorry, I'm just thinking. I wanted to ask staff about an idea, which is with regard to the interiors, assuming that it's council that's going to have kind of purview to kind of do a certificate of appropriateness on the interiors. Do I have this right, that this is kind of what's going to happen? I know it's not technically a certificate of appropriateness.
It wouldn't be a certificate of appropriateness. It's just a council approval for changes.
And is it anticipated that landmarks would play an advisory role, that they would comment and provide input to council?
That's been the history of this applicant, to bring things to the Landmarks Commission in advance of proceeding to the council. There was a need to do some testing that kind of created this issue or really brought light to this issue where, because it was on the interior and we have this preservation covenant, they were not able to do the testing without getting that council approval. And it was literally drilling little holes in the wall just for some testing. So we had to go to that extreme just to have the council approval for that. So we'd like to eventually, at least when I say we, the commission would like to take that back and have that authority to be able to to make those changes on the interior.
I guess the other question that I have for staff is that I'll show my hands. I mean, I'm inclined to recommend approval. I'm inclined to recommend approval tonight, except that there's all this mushmash around the conditions, and I'm not quite sure. I guess I'd appreciate staff's thoughts on that, because on the one hand I feel like there's a applicant before us tonight, and we should, if we're inclined to approve their proposal, then we should be approving it. But I kind of feel like the conditions were not
so we might
sharp.
With us, the city planning manager.
Yeah, I mean, we appreciate the question and the concern. We were trying to deal with that today too. With there's a staff report that was written 2 weeks ago and that was given to the commission, and we do try to make sure that you have information in a timely manner. So we were working as much as we could today to go through the applicant's information that was submitted last night. Unfortunately, the manner in which the TDM plan that's written, it does include sort of the broad concept of what was discussed. However, we have to turn that TDM plan into conditions of approval language, which it needs to be measurable. There needs to be some timing factor. We have to work out the details. We've sort of done, I'll be very honest, a very rough first draft of conditions today, but our work isn't completed on that. The applicant hasn't seen it. We don't even know if they're okay with it. We genuinely feel like we would need more time with the applicant to at least do one more pass on the TDM plan to go through those conditions and make sure that we understand what is being proposed and what's being agreed to. There's also this new concept of off-site parking that has, quite frankly, never been discussed with staff and the applicant, and we're not sure we understand how it might work and what the consequences will be if they're not able to secure it, because they're proposing that it be secured before C of O. If they're not able to, what happens? And do they do it in perpetuity, and where is it? So I think those speak to issues that we would like time to resolve. That being said, of course the commission does have the staff report, and you do have the letter from the applicant before you. If you felt comfortable giving particular direction to staff on conditions that should be drafted, we can bring that back at your next meeting as a statement of official action. But I'm just offering to you, where we feel that we're at.
And Commissioners, what I might suggest is that tonight there are 3 motions that have been put to us as part of the Planning Department report that we would have to deal with. You could certainly deal with one, which is the mitigated negative declaration, but probably a very sensible course of action is to continue this until April 20 and exact from all of us what we would like to see in the statement of official action and the permits going forward. Ask our planning department to bring it all together and then bring it back to us to make a final decision on that. And I think what we've heard from both the applicant and from the city is that they're in sort of broad agreement in a lot of areas, but there's a lot of detail that needs to be tied up. And so if that's broadly acceptable to you, what I'm going to suggest is that each of us now have a chance to say some things about what we think are important to be in there, and then have the planning department take it away and refine it. Oh, and City Attorney?
If I may, I would just like to make clear to follow up on one of Commissioner Newbold's questions about whether or not the fence is before you, and it is not before you this evening, as for the reasons the planning manager explained previously. Fences are not the subject of DRs. They are generally considered part of landscaping and design, and that's why it was brought to the Landmarks Commission and not the ARB, as it was subject to their purview for a certificate of appropriateness, which they did rule on.
Thank you for that contribution. So, Commissioner Kennedy?
Can I just ask a follow-up on that? So is that, if I have a question about Chapter 9.37140, which is interpretations. which allows the Planning Commission discretion to question an interpretation of the general plan, zoning code specific plan, or any application to any specific case or situation. How, because it's been asserted that this isn't within our purview, however, our staff report states that well, the Bayside plan is actually silent on fences, but the city of Santa Monica and other areas has a lot of say and standards about fences in other areas, that it seems to me that this would be something that would benefit from an interpretation. So my question is, if this commission wanted to go that route, how would it be done? And Chair, why did you propose the date of April 20th for the continuance?
Well, simply to allow planning department to go away, do their work, negotiate backwards and forwards, do noticing and so on. But let's ask.
And I'd like to add to staff, my question to staff, why wouldn't we wait until the downtown specific plan is finished?
So I think.
So to the first question as to interpretations, the section you're referencing is actually in the new zoning ordinance. This application is actually under the prior 1988 zoning ordinance, which doesn't have that kind of a mechanism. That was something that was new and added to common procedures. We've kind of, I think, offered you our best thought as to the findings that are made as part of a development review permit, and it really speaks to structures. It speaks to physical location, size, massing, placement of structures, and talks a lot about size of the project. So it really suggests talking about building mass, and the fencing being part of the landscaping. Is really part of a design review purview. That being said, that if the commission has suggestions about, as you often do, you notice things on plans, that the plans that come before you are sort of concepts in some way. The final design is subject to the design review body, which in this case would be the Landmarks Commission. The Landmarks Commission has acted on that certificate of appropriateness, as Heidi had explained. So that's really not before you tonight. If you had suggestions on things, often the commission will say the ARB, or in this case the Landmarks Commission, may pay particular attention to something else. But again, that particular fence, the 5-foot fence, that's already been acted on. That's a final action, and that's not before the commission tonight. To address your question about the DCP, why this is coming forward, the council actually did look at and gave direction regarding pending development agreements. So that was, I think it was in October, David. And we looked at what was coming up on the docket, and the council gave direction that yes, almost all the development agreements would be put on hold, with the exception of ones that have been in the pipeline. One was 500 Broadway, which you saw last week, and the other ones were fire station, related to the fire station swap. Development review permits weren't the subject of that direction from council, so those have proceeded forward. They're not negotiated development agreements, they're regular permits that have timeframes, and we have an obligation as a city to continue to diligently process them.
Thank you. Commissioner Fresco?
I'm ready to expound on the project if you're ready for that to begin.
I'm certainly ready. If the Commission's prepared to follow the guidance, what I think we should all do is just expound in a very focused, direct, to the point way, and somebody write that down, and then we will look at the mitigated negative declaration at the end and see whether we want to do that. So Commissioner Fresco start, and then it'll be Commissioner Fonda Bernardi and Commissioner Anderson.
I just wanted to say as a start that overall, I think this is a fabulous project. I'm really excited that there's this great adaptive reuse. And in terms of massing and scale of this addition, I think that it's working really well and is sufficiently subservient to the building. But I do not think that the design of this addition is compatible. I think that when I first got, as I mentioned before, I had not been to any meetings or discussions about any of these plans. I had never seen them, and I was stunned when I saw it because it seems so much busier and perpendicular to the post office design. There are a few, and I learned more about the genesis from this meeting when the architect was referring to it being a classical interpretation. And of course, to me, well, there's not a picture of it up, but this style is not really the classical style. This is the style they were building when I was in college. And it really, I guess because this is such an exciting business and they're doing exciting things, I really expected they were going to do something really new and exciting that really added something to the building, and I didn't expect something that looked mundane and didn't respond to anything about the post office. So some of the things about a PWA building is they had a basic form. They were all the same, and then they added to those forms so that it appeared to be in consonance with its region. So in California, they added Deco or Beaux-Arts elements to them. And so it's not really an Art Deco building. It's not really a streamlined, modern building. It doesn't have those horizontal things. It has the same old vertical windows and vertical solids between them. And I see no sense of that rhythm in the addition, and that was a huge disappointment. The other thing about these buildings, these post office buildings in California, they had special standards because it was the 30s and there had been a huge earthquake. They never used cladding because it could fall off if there was another earthquake, and they never had cornices and things that would get them in trouble because of the earthquake. So those are all really interesting, cool things about these buildings. They only used steel, metal, or wood, which is also really cool. And this back addition could have taken advantage of all that cool stuff and done some sort of interpretive new thing instead of building an office building that they were building when I was a kid, so or even a young adult. So I really have a big problem with the compatibility. So that in terms of the interpretive element, I really hate the word commemorative because that's just sort of there. I mean, the sign in the building, the original where it says United States Post Office, that's commemorative. Interpretive would explain some of this stuff, make it so people could understand it. And so I don't like seeing the word commemorative anywhere in the document. I really want it to add something to the experience. And this side of this building is actually one of our boulevards that's supposed to be really active. So having an interpretive display there that really engages pedestrians who've just walked past many, many feet of boring fence would be really valuable. And I'm not that comfortable with the idea of sticking bikes in there for that reason. I would like it to be a real thing. And although bikes would be nice, but maybe there can be another space for bikes. So that said, I have some specific, I know Richard likes it when I'm very specific. So I worked on that. In condition 10, so basically those comments are things that I would like to draw attention to the Landmarks Commission, and because it's so important that this meet the Secretary of Exterior standards because of the conditions, and even in the findings, it has to be compatible. So we got the differentiation down, now let's work on the compatibility. So condition 10 has to do with the HABS documentation, and before this design was really drawn up this far and was just sort of a concept, I did have the opportunity to tour the building with the team and the historic consultant, Robert Chattel, and I saw some really super cool things in there, in particular a spy walkway that the postal higher level people would walk on and peer through little windows so they could spy on the workers and make sure nobody was stealing stamps. And it was really cool, and it's totally anachronistic, and nobody's ever going to build that again because, of course, now we have cameras. And so I really would like to make sure that the HABS documentation really documents that, not just a photo, yeah, that's where it was, but really make sure that we can really understand what it looked like and what it was like. And I think you showed me by each little window there was a light switch so that the guy wouldn't be seen spying on the employees. I mean, it was really quite a thing. So I just want to make sure that the HABs covers that kind of stuff. And that it also talks about the background of the post offices. It said about our city and about the post office in Santa Monica, and I just thought some of that PWA information should certainly be in the report, which maybe is understood, but it wasn't in the conditions. In condition 13, there was something where they referred to the building and the Landmarks Commission. I can't remember exactly what it was. Hold on. That the Landmarks Commission would look at plans involving modification to the building, but of course it's a landmark parcel, so it would be the parcel or the property or whatever. So that's just a correction, a small one. In condition 19, that's demolition monitoring, and I just wanted to make sure that materials that were hidden before demolition began, that were revealed that we didn't know about, make sure that all that urban archaeology is well documented, and perhaps color photos so that we can really understand the materials and the colors and the textures better than we can in the traditional HABs black and white photos. In number 25, I know in the STOA for the dreaded fence that it said the Landmarks Commission would review the interpretive program, and but I thought they should also add that information to condition 25. In condition 32, there's 3 typos that have to do with extra carriage returns, or whatever you call them in a computer. In condition 52, which is the TDM thing, it's just a little awkward the way it begins, because it says that it's memorializing the applicant's proposal. But I think in this document, we just, by the time we get here, we're just saying this is what you're going to do. We should take out that fuzzy stuff. And in 89, I had something to say. This is the one about lighting, and there's also something about lighting in 95. One is on-site, one is on the street, and as many of you may or may not know, I have a great love of historic street lamps, and I'm always wishing that they would come back, and a lot of times when we have new developments in Santa Monica, they get to kind of control the street lamps along their edge, so these should be the historic double lantern model that we saw in some of the pictures that have been on the screen earlier. And those are my notes.
Thank you. Commissioner Fonda Bernardi.
I'll just zero in because we're going to cover a lot of ground, but I'll just zero in on the parking problem. And the reason it's a problem is that if this building was a new building, we would be required to put 160 parking spaces in this building. And so you ask yourself, well, how much do we give to a historic building? And we're saying, well, we're going to give them 25 spaces. That's a sixth of what they need. And I am convinced that we don't have to give that much. I think we could even maybe get them up to a third without trying very hard. And with appropriate redesign and rethinking of their space, they could recapture the 2,500 square feet. This is not a building that you can't add parking to. It's just that simple. It's very straightforward. In fact, this is the perfect building for adding parking to, because it already had a parking bay the full length of that alley. So this is not a real problem. And then when we actually look at the 25 spaces they have, guess what? 20 of them are substandard. They don't even make compact size spaces. Now, God bless the small car and the smart car, and cars are going to get smaller, but You know, we were just told we can't even put in ramps within 25 feet of a compact space because someone might try to wedge in a big car. Well, that's all that's going to be happening here. You're going to have 5 spaces where are full-size cars. Everybody else is going to be wedging into these substandard compact spaces without adequate backup. So I guess I think it's a solvable problem, and I think we should try a little harder. And I think we should, as a commission, be a little more responsive to what actually goes down. The other option is to deed restrict a certain number of off-site parking spaces that some willing parking provider can do for us, and then let it go at that. And I guess we run into the problem, what happens if they can't find them? What I'm saying is you can find them. They're already there. They're already waiting to be plucked. They're low-hanging fruit. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Henderson.
I like a lot of things about this project. I like that it's preserving and restoring a historic building. I'm very comfortable with the proposed parking, in large part because I think it's very consistent with the vision that we're pursuing in the downtown community plan, where we're trying to emphasize alternative means of transportation. And I think, as one of the public speakers said, really the best way to do that is the carrot stick of constraining the parking supply and then providing all these incentives for people to use alternative means of transportation. And interestingly, I think that downtown office space in downtown Santa Monica is probably one of the best opportunities and most attractive opportunities for people to take alternative means of transit, because once they're downtown, it's so easy to access the restaurants and to kind of move around, right? So they come from their home, they go to downtown, they can move around while they're, at their office, and then they can head back home. So I guess I would ask staff to include something related to the unbundled parking and to refine the obligations regarding the parking allowance. And then I guess throughout, just I think as the applicant suggested, I think we want to just be cognizant of this, these obligations applying to a future situation where the owner is leasing out the building, but also applying to the current situation. I agree with everything that Commissioner Fresco said about the design. I was taken aback when I saw this rendering, and I won't. She knows her stuff, right? And she had a lot of good guidance. But I think the thing that immediately caught my eye, right? The massing is right. Luckily, you have a really simple building to start with, and I think the side setbacks are great, and the height is great. But the fenestration pattern is so off, right? It's like the historic building is horizontal. It goes solid, void, solid, void, solid, void. And the new building is vertical. It goes solid, void, solid, void, solid, void. So I think that's in part why it's so disconcerting. I would, in part of, I guess, our conditions is urging the Landmarks Commission to reconsider the design as Commissioner Fresco has recommended. And then I think my last recommendation is to just that the Landmarks Commission does kind of officially act in an advisory role to the City Council on the proposed changes to the interior. I think that's everything.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. Commissioner Kennedy, some thoughts from you?
Just briefly, I just wanted to say that I feel the same way and want to just say ditto. I reiterate the concerns that Commissioner Fresco had. I feel the same way. I thought when I reviewed this that the addition the way it relates to the alley and the way we're working in the downtown specific plan to kind of do more with our alleys, that this project doesn't meet that meet that standard. Generally speaking, it's very well. I was interested when I got the letter from Downtown Santa Monica Inc. Board of Directors, because they described it as the proposed expansion lacks creativity and distinction, and I feel the same way, and I agree with their comments about striving to make that alley elevation more interesting. We can't. We're told that we can't consider it, but I've already expressed my opinion on the fence, and I am very troubled by the height of the fence around this property. And I am really pleased that there is somebody coming in and interested in adaptively reusing this landmark. But I feel like the pendulum has swung too far in terms of what they're trying to do on the property, and it's, to me, what they've proposed doesn't really preserve the beauty of this landmark building, nor the spirit of the way this building is situated in our downtown. I feel like it abuses it and removes the meaning that it had, and the feeling and the character that it had to the public. The applicant talking about the off-site parking and saying that they need 18 months, I feel like they hopefully can get that resolved in 4 weeks if we're going to be hearing this again in 4 weeks, because that's a big problem for me. As far as a water feature on this property, I don't think it's appropriate at all. To me, that type of a thing is more appropriate in, an office complex setting. For example, something like that in front of City Hall here, which is an office complex for city government. But I don't feel like it's appropriate in that location.
Thank you, Commissioner Kennedy. Commissioner Newbold.
I think this is a really exciting project that, we're going to finally get this building up and running again. I think that the mass and scale is appropriate. I am also comfortable with the parking variance. I think that, I've been looking and I can't find it, that we're recommending right now in the DCP, they would only need 29 spaces. Did I read that correctly?
That's right, under the new one. Yeah.
I would just reiterate, I think that the parking variance is in the direction that we're trying to go in the downtown. I looked at it and I thought, is this elegantly simple, this design, or is it like a dentist office off the highway? And I don't feel like I'm equipped to know, and so it's disappointing that it's not going to go to the ARB, because I was going to ask that question, the ARB, to review that. So I want to say that I concur. I think Ms. Fresco said it perfectly and sort of articulated sort of my, what's going on there? So I have that concern. And I'm also concerned, the water feature, I don't get why we're doing a water feature. And the notch on the corner, it could be really cool and it could really be awful. And I feel like we don't know. And I don't know who makes that determination, because it's going to be really important because of the way that street works. And then lastly, I would just say, given that I have a house that I think has a similar orientation, you're going to want some kind of shade structures on those windows, probably exterior shade structures, and that's something you should think about. I think that's all.
Commissioner Parry.
Yeah, I agree that this is, there's a lot to like about this project. I do not share the concerns about the design. As others have, I agree that the mass and scale is appropriate, but I'm willing to support the suggestion that we ask Landmarks to consider other design approaches to it, despite the fact that I don't agree. the idea of adding parking to the property, I do not support because I think that we can achieve a better outcome than what code requires. While I obviously acknowledge that the downtown community plan is currently proposing less parking than what the old code did. They did apply under the old code, and they are enjoying the benefits of the old code. And we, as part of the variance findings, we need to be able to say that we are allowing this variance because it would not be detrimental to the neighborhood. And in order to achieve that, I think it's necessary to have an off-site parking requirement within this. And I'll put out a very rough sketch of what I think that could look like, and I would ask commissioners to comment on it if they wish, and ask staff to develop the ideas into something we see when this returns. The basics are that the applicant would be required to provide off-site parking for 23 spaces unless the applicant can demonstrate that its demand is less than that, and that this plan would be subject to approval by the planning director, and it would need to avoid the downtown core as the parking location or locations in order to, consistent with that idea of trying to shift it to the periphery and decongest the downtown core. And that the plan would have a convenient and no or low impact means of getting to and from the parking sites, and that it would be the applicant would need to document that this was an underutilized parking location. So the idea being, we're not just looking to crowd out parking opportunities in the downtown, we're looking to better utilize what's there, and that would be in keeping with, as I see it, making that finding that this approval would not be detrimental to the area.
Thank you, Commissioner. So let's wrap up this part of it. So there is a lot of work necessary on the parking aspect of it, from my perspective, that still needs to be done, and there needs to be resolution between the applicant and the city about how this is all going to work. Commissioner Parry's advocated one possible solution. I think I have some concerns about the shuttle aspect of that, whether or not guys would just be driving and then they would have a company-provided Uber that would pick them up, and that doesn't kind of drive down the trips. It just shifts the trips around. So let's see how they go in discussions. I think it's an interesting idea that you've advocated, and you want to respond to it now?
Well, I hope that nothing I said suggested that I think shuttle is the answer.
No, except when you said convenient low or no impact. Convenient low might be, they have a series of EV vehicles that just go and pick these guys up, or what? Or something else.
Or close enough to walk.
Yeah, close enough to walk, but that might imply the downtown core. So I don't know. I think you've advocated something that's an interesting idea. Let's see how planning responds to it and brings it back. I think that's reasonable. So that's one issue. I think the issue of the incentives and the penalties, if you can't make the plan work, is really important, and I'd like to see that written in. That was one of the key features last week. For the first time, we had a trip cap that had financial penalties in it, and that really, really focused the applicant. In every discussion, they wanted to know how they could match that. So that's clearly something that's important. I think the cash out and how we get people moving on a cash out basis towards a monthly plan by daily cash outs up to a maximum of 8 or 10 days, so that you're encouraging people to at least try it, leave the car at home maybe 2 days a week, and move to a more sustainable basis is quite important. I would certainly like to see, and we've had some discussions about having some EV charging stations there, as well as more stub outs, some storage for renewable energy, so that as we move forward, it's a future proofing of this building. And 2 ride shares turning into 4 ride shares. In other words, laying a basis so that people are moving away from 48 or 60 cars coming into the downtown every day to 23 or less cars, 15 cars, because of the incredibly rich array of public transport and other options that we now have. And our path here is to break the habits and to get you into a new way of doing things, and that's what the downtown of Santa Monica implies. I think the massing is correct. You've done a really great job from across 5th Street in hiding that and positioning it and adding to it, and that's a really important thing to say, because you don't detract from what this building reads to people along Arizona and on 5th. I'm really ambivalent. You've left me pretty cold with the architecture on at the back there, but that's, I guess, for you to have a think about, and also for the landmarks. I am intensely disappointed about the fence. I think the one thing that was striking was in the earlier pictures of the building, as it was 80 years ago, the cleanness of the facade and the ability of people to walk around it was really important. And in this area, we've got 4th, 5th and Arizona across the road that will be built. Something will go there. We're turning Arizona into a walk street. We're doing everything we can possibly to make this an attractive pedestrian. You are privatising the space, but you're putting a physical barrier in. And so I know we can't force you to do it. I'm urging you as an applicant to think about that again and see what you can do when you come back, rather than simply hold a hand up to us and say, talk to the hand. That's not a good response. And you've heard from so many people here, even the people who go, it's not before us, they go, but it's really disappointing. So that's the ball back in your court. And then I guess we go forward and we'll see what the resolution between the planning department and the applicant is. City Attorney, is it useful to move the negative declaration this evening, or is that just part of a parcel, a package?
You may consider it tonight if you wish, or you may continue everything and consider everything at your next hearing on this. If you do decide to adopt the mitigated neg deck this evening, you will have 60 days to render a decision on the project.
Perhaps it's better if we wait then and do it all as a package, and that way we could contemplate all these things at once. So I guess, Commissioner Fresco?
Did I mention in my huge list about the water that I really think it's more important that this project be really low water usage and not have a runnel if that's the deal breaker?
I think you did mention the runnel, actually. I'd never heard of a runnel until you mentioned it. But, yeah. Commissioner Anderson.
I don't want to extend our conversation too much longer, but I guess I would share that I have concerns with what Commissioner Perry was proposing in terms of required off-site parking. And I think it makes me uncomfortable because I feel like it's almost like this is the ultimate in unbundled parking, right? Like the developer is going to have every incentive, if they don't have enough people using alternative means of transportation to get to the site, to go find off-site parking. So I feel like there's enough market incentive for that to just happen that we don't need to require it. We heard the applicant say that there's a culture shift and that, TDMs are really important. I'm a little skeptical of that, right? TDMs are really important because they don't have enough parking. So they're going to have to work really hard to figure out incentives to get people to come to the site in different ways. And I guess I'm just concerned about undermining them.
So could I just chip in? And I think what I feel is that Commissioner Parry put an idea into play, and what is now the most useful thing is if the planning department, who say they haven't had time to review the applicant, go away and look at it, think it through, and bring back a proposal to us one way or the other, and then we kick it around.
Yeah.
Because Commissioner Fonda Bernardi has said he needs a lot more parking. Let's hear from the pros on this one.
I just wanted.
And I always appreciate your thoughts.
Again, I'll make it really simple without making us all look like hypocrites. You know, we asked the ARB to take up to 5% of the units off of a large housing project that we recently approved. And yet we're not willing to take 5% off of a project that's in front of us to provide parking that's vitally needed, and that we're going to paint ourselves into all these conniptions with these surveys afterwards and this and that, when we have the solution is laid out right in front of us. All we have to do is use it. And so I'm suggesting that sometimes the simplest thing is the best. And let's be honest, the TDMs are awesome. They're great. They're some of the best TDMs we've ever seen. However, we all know that TDMs are a necessary but not sufficient condition. They simply don't do the job. We've had over a decade of TDMs, and you look at the traffic downtown, what do you see? You see the tumor is growing. We used to be able to drive down Lincoln. Now we can't drive down 11th Street. Tomorrow it's 14th. Come back in 10 years, it's 17th Street. So you see where this is going? They're just not working, and there's a lot of cutting and filling and conniptions we have to do afterwards. I think we cut to the chase. Just provide the parking. I think if we give them 45 parking spaces, go home. Job done.
Okay. Commissioner Kennedy?
Weigh on Commissioner Parry's suggestion, I wanted to weigh in too and just say that I do hope that when the planning staff is working on this over the next month, that they do look at some of those suggestions. I'm not saying I disagree with, for example, what Commissioner Fonda Bernardi said about TDMs or anything. I agree. I have concerns about them as well. But I like the idea of especially avoiding the downtown core area, and I feel that it's a starting point, and so I want to just put an extra comment in there to let staff know at least that I, and perhaps others who haven't spoken up on Commissioner Parry's suggestion, feel that it is worth exploring.
Excellent. I move until April the 20th. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Seconded, Commissioner Parry. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, no. Continued until April 20. We'll see you all back here at that time.
If I could just, I just want to comment on your comment about TDMs don't work. I mean, I wouldn't say they don't work. They don't completely eliminate traffic, of course, but they do help in reducing traffic. And we don't know what our traffic situation would be like without them. So I do think they are an important part of the
I agree.
package. Okay, thank you.
So we're now on 9A, and this is in response to the zoning discussion that we had earlier on, and that when we finished the zoning update last year, a motion was moved that within a year we would consider policy issues arising from the adoption of the zoning update. We're now at that point where members of the Planning Commission can introduce policy items that they would like to see considered for some time in the summer, and that may be, depending on the schedule and availability of people, June, probably July, I guess. Requires quite a deal of work and the writing of a report. So I think we'll start at this end of the table. Commissioner Parry, would you? Yes, Commissioner Kennedy.
Question about the procedure. We've had 4 meetings this month. I've spent an exorbitant amount of time reviewing the downtown specific plan and the projects that we've seen that are still coming through the pipeline. What opportunity will we have to add to this list after this evening?
Sorry, can we?
Well, I think that's a process question, isn't it? So let's say tonight we produce a list. What happens then? Do you go away and analyse it and say these are our top 5 things that we would like to do?
Right. I think first, if we could maybe take a step back as to the purpose of why this was agendized tonight, is that we didn't, and certainly the commission can give us whatever direction you desire. We sort of created this list, what we called issues of policy, but it was not meant to be a complete reopener on a zoning ordinance that was adopted a mere 7 months ago, and that we're still working with and learning to implement and sort of figuring these issues out. We do have some examples of the types of things that we considered issues of policy. They weren't really, again, new issues of policy. They were areas where we felt there was ambiguous intent in clarifying some provisions of the zoning code and using it, and staff was not comfortable making that call without having a public and transparent discussion as to clarifying the commission or the council's intent on these clarifications. That being said, tonight is an opportunity for the commission to give, really making a list, giving us direction on clarifications that you have noticed, that have that same ambiguous intent. If you can give us a list tonight, certainly, we're open to receiving, additional suggestions from commissioners over the term. Our idea is to go away and take a look at all of the issues that have been raised and bring it back for discussion sometime in the summer. It wouldn't be brought back as an immediate resolution. It would just be analysis of here's what we think of these issues and here are the pros and cons, and to sort of work through all of the issues to ultimately bring back to you something for final action.
Commissioner Newbold.
So the intent is to, if we've noticed some conflict, to bring it up, and if we haven't noticed anything, we don't have anything to add. But you guys have noticed things, and so you have a list somewhere, but we did not get it. Is that correct?
Right. We just have, and Ariel can put up, we just had a slide. It wasn't meant to be, this is just the running list we've been having, and it's just a...
gets added to as things
right,
come up or people bring them.
This is just to provide you some context as to the kinds of things that we've seen, and maybe you've seen the same thing, so we're not...
So City Attorney Rosenthal.
I just wanted to add to, just a little bit, I think Jean captured it exactly, but part of this also was, you were going to be dealing with item 8A, where we were talking, it was simply about clarifications and those types of things, and we thought that it was possible during that review that you would have discovered things that were more than that, and we didn't think it wasn't going to be appropriate in item 8A to discuss that, but we wanted to provide kind of an opportunity for you to just, if things came up during that review that are more of a policy, again related to the not a revisiting of the zoning ordinance, but related to ambiguities, that this would be an opportunity to start just adding that to the list of things that we found, which will then be coming back. And again, as is repeated in several different ways, this is all preliminary. It's understood to be preliminary, and so there's nothing this will not inhibit you from adding to the list at a later time. It won't inhibit you from, even if we've done one pass, you have full opportunity at any time to do another pass. I mean, you have the right to initiate reviews of the zoning ordinance when you through a resolution of intention. So this will not in any way inhibit your authority to do that.
Commissioner Kennedy?
Can you please send us this list that is your tentative draft at some point, so that we can have it beginning tomorrow to help jog our memories? Thank you.
Isn't there also scheduled at some point a review of the zoning ordinance where it's not just clarifications, but a chance to just sort of see if maybe we want it? Is that something that I misunderstood, or is this...
I'd like to speak to that just before you do, Mr. Martin. So the intention, since I moved this motion, I'd just like to chip in.
Okay.
A year ago was that there would be a review, and it would not be, as so gently put by the city planning manager, a list of things that the staff had come up that they just wanted you to think about. That it doesn't matter whether the zoning code is 7 months old. There are things that the planning commission wants to bring to attention and have some discussion about. And it may be that they came up during the course of this last year, or that were things that were unresolved. To suggest that we only should consider what you are putting in front of us, I think is a misunderstanding. No, I haven't quite finished. That is, in fact, the way I read the comments that you put to us, and you've now got this very helpful list. Our job is to put a list of things to you that we would like to have a look at and get some resolution of that, and to set some time with your guidance to bring that list into some sort of focus as the top issues and then work through them. So that's what we're doing tonight, I think. And in a minute I'll go and I will solicit the rest of the Commission about the things they want to. It's not, as Commissioner Newbold said, oh, well, you've got your list, therefore we don't have to add to it.
I mean, the agenda item says preliminary planning commission identification, discussion of policy issues.
Right.
It fully acknowledges that it is the planning commission that will ultimately, as is always the case, be the arbiter over these issues. Of course, it's the planning commission's.
I'm not sure that's the
decision.
way some of us read it.
I apologize if there was misunderstanding. It was in no way attempting to say that you're looking at the staff's list. We're providing this to be helpful, and we're here to listen to any issues that the Commission wants to bring up.
Commissioner
and we're committed
Fresco.
to.
I thought that was very clear, let me just say.
Well, what I'm curious about is, when you all were doing the zoning ordinance and I was sitting back there meddling like crazy, I was on a couple of different committees, and one of them was with my neighborhood group, and we started months in advance. They even started before I found out they were doing it and joined, and provided a really comprehensive list of specific things for the Ocean Park neighborhood from a very early day, and a lot of it was implemented. And I remember sitting here getting ready to yammer away about landmarks, and somebody from another neighborhood group came up and said, hey, we have a list too. And they said, well, we can't start over with a new list for a new neighborhood now. We'll do that when we do the revision. So isn't this the time to look at those revisions from those neighborhood groups who hadn't really been prepared in that cycle? Or is that
Ariel.
something, somebody?
When
are we supposed, I just feel like that's a big gap.
I think this is a time to address any concerns that the Commission has or that people want to bring up. The only caution is, of course, we don't want to redo the zoning ordinance.
No.
That was a lengthy process, and we just did it less than a year ago. But certainly, if there's something that was missed or that we didn't address last time around, then this would be the time to bring it up. And then we will consider those things that come up. We'll come back to you with a staff report and recommendations on whether or not we would recommend that we make a change. But it's all before the Commission in terms of what you want to consider and what you want to recommend action on to the City Council.
Okay.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Commissioner Fresco and say that I think that now definitely is the time for that, because this is your opportunity to take that feedback from the public and say, hey, these are some issues, and I imagine that through tonight and other future, maybe we can tack this on to the end of our next 6 agendas or something, so that as we are continuing our work as planning commissioners over time and over the weeks, and we look at things and we read stuff on our own time and all that, we can say, oh, there's something, and then at some point the staff's going to say, my bucket is full, and now I'm going to start saying, oh, everyone's over here said height, over here is what FAR, and they're going to put, well, it's already full. But the point, and then hopefully they'll categorize it in such a way that we can handle it, and it isn't going to, come all at one meeting. Maybe, chapter blah, blah, blah will come on one night and another.
Okay, Commissioner Newbold.
So, can I bring up an issue? Or we do have to talk about
now's the
how
moment.
we're going to bring up the issues? Okay. Is there an issue? Because I don't fully understand it, and I know what a public speaker tonight talked about. If I'm understanding correctly, and I don't want to talk about that project because I know it's coming here, but this possibility that a single family house on a multifamily lot, I get that it can't be bigger than, if it was 3 units, it would just be a very big single family house. But I guess it comes to this idea that we allow single family and duplexes in all of our anywhere. And we all sort of go around thinking, oh, well, who would do that? But I wonder, as some people are doing it. I think there's one going up on Broadway, and I just wonder if that's sort of a completely new issue. But maybe we do want to think about not allowing. I know that we have this issue with some already exist, but we don't want to have a bunch of single-family houses along our boulevards and in our multifamily zones for many reasons. And I don't know, I feel like it's something that seems unlikely, but I do think it's happening. And so I wonder if we want to think about addressing that in some way.
Okay. On the list, Commissioner Perry?
So just to be clear, this is not my opportunity to relitigate all the votes I lost during the zoning ordinance.
But
And unfortunately, my list is very short.
Yeah.
Or fortunately, really, it's the item that came up tonight that I said I had questions about, how the waiver process as it relates to Unimix, waiver findings for Unimix standards. I'm also curious how it connects to our work and the discretionary review process, and if there's some fine tuning that's appropriate there.
Okay. Commissioner Fonda Bernardi?
I think we kind of shot ourselves in the foot earlier this evening because it's exactly that unit mix problem that I felt we should have taken out of the current document that we approved and parked it in the future to discuss, to try to understand if there's any unintended consequences or a better way to do it. We didn't do that, and that's rather disappointing. And there were maybe 3 or 4 items like that we could have pulled out, held off for discussion. There was no need to solve all the typos that we dealt with earlier this evening. I thought there was a lot of things needed to get off our table, but we could have held back on a few of them that would merit a little more discussion.
Okay. Commissioner Fresco and then Commissioner Kennedy.
I'd like to look at our fence and hedge ordinance and see how we can make it have a broader application.
In the downtown specifically, I assume. Commissioner Kennedy.
Well, I was just going to say the same thing, but I'll elaborate on it and say I want to take a look at whatever language, procedures, rules of order, whatever are in place that enables the Planning Commission to not have the ability to review a fence on a landmark property in the downtown or anywhere for that matter. Because if this is an example of something that we could potentially be seeing more of in the future, then we got to get on it right away. So I think we need to really methodically look at every step and try to figure out something that's fair and give the appropriate review bodies the chance to weigh in on various aspects because it crosses boundaries.
Thank you, Commissioner.
It crosses discretionary boundaries, in my opinion. And then I was going to weigh in on the unit mix, which I already see is up there, the duplex issue, and I just actually personally need more time to come up with a bigger list, so I'm happy to hear from staff that we can add to this list.
And I assume the committee, and you would add the list and then we'll go through and prioritize. Commissioner Parry.
If I could ask staff to, remind me what the expectation is on the Pico neighborhood zoning.
Yeah, that's a separate process that we are undertaking at council direction. It's kind of behind the downtown plan now, but we have actually met with the representatives from the Pico neighborhood just within the last week, and we are starting some preliminary work on that, but we won't really be full steam on that until probably, this fall, probably the earliest.
Thank you.
But the process is underway, is what
Yes.
you're essentially
Yes.
saying. The creation of zoning for the Pico neighbourhood that we were asking about a year or so ago. So I have 2 or 3 things. I think what's happened as we've reviewed some of the projects, it's become clear that the issues of parking and bike parking don't seem to be quite in sync, that we're not getting as much bike parking as we had expected out of it, but we've still got other issues. There's a restrictiveness to some of the parking. The medical building that was opposite St John's was the one that struck me. In sustainability terms, when people come in for permits, we can't insist that they put solar panel or renewable energy on the roof because it's not part of the zoning code. It's linked to the state standards, but they tend to just say to us, yeah, well, you can't make us do that. We'll look at it and we'll do something else. I think the issue that Arcadia Street is perversely matched is the way average natural grade is working, because there's a built-up natural grade down there in Arcadia. So that guy's talking about building a 55-foot high. But up in Sunset Park, there's a guy who can only build 3 feet before he tops out. So kind of a John Malkovich situation, I guess. But so we need to look at that because that wasn't what we were anticipating. But I think the single most important for me is that along the boulevards and certainly in the downtown, what we saw is people going, just too hard. I think we'll put up a 1 or 2 story commercial building, just put offices or retail in it, the dreaded Petco that Commissioner Kennedy's talking about. That's not what we want. We don't want them just to be incentivized to do that. So maybe it's a discussion of whether or not there would have to be a requirement of a CUP or some sort of discretionary permit, but housing doesn't get that. And I'm really not sure how that'll work, but all I can sense is that developers will take the least difficult option and give us not the things that we don't want. So some discussion about that is in my mind. And they were the first 4 things, I guess, and then you've captured a couple of the other things up there. So is that enough for you to comprise a list and then prioritise it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Go for it. So what would be the process? Would you bring back or send us back a list or put a discussion on an agenda at some stage?
I think we would agendize this for a future meeting that that has room. To have another discussion item where we would take some time to go through not only some of the issues that we've seen, but what we've heard tonight to provide, I think just to reword it, so to make sure that we're capturing the issue that the commissioner has shared with us tonight, and then have a discussion about that before we go away and do kind of
Will
analysis.
the City Council also be asked to whether they have some issues that they want in this mix? I mean, if we're actually reviewing the zoning code, they may also have identified some issues.
I think we haven't received that direction from the council yet. If any of these issues of policy are brought forward for amendments to the zoning code, eventually they would make their way to the council. In that manner, I think we would try and sort of consolidate it together. So it would be done in that manner.
Commissioner Fresco and then Commissioner Kennedy.
If we come up with other things, do we have to present them at a meeting, or can we just email you?
Email.
Email is
okay. It doesn't have to be.
Yeah,
Right,
Commissioner
that's
Kennedy
what-
and then Commissioner Newbold.
So I wanted to just ask a clarifying question about Commissioner Fresco's earlier question and the discussion of who will be putting together, who will be providing the items for this list. So is this an opportunity for the Planning Commission and staff to create this list? I understand you're hearing from the Commission, but are you also going to be soliciting or adding to the list from comments from groups, interested parties, stakeholders, anyone that doesn't come through the Planning Commission?
I think, I will say the sort of initial preliminary list you see here that staff has put up on the screen actually has come from just the practical implementation of the code. So it's really come from the community and the stakeholders, and as we've taken planner calls and worked with people, and people have raised questions either through email. We sort of get these on a rolling basis as it's a living document.
Right.
In that way. So these are kind of representative of those. I don't think we anticipated having a formal process to go out and solicit that input. I think we want to sort of use the Planning Commission a public meeting process as a way to do that, and that if people want to, and that they can email us at any time. To raise issues, and we're happy to look at it.
I understand. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so I will, Commissioner Newbold.
Well, and this is an ongoing process for the life of the document. There's going to be a lot of issues initially because people are just using it now, but in 10 years, something will come up probably, and there'll be some.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amendment. That's what happened with the last one.
That's how it was under the prior code. Yeah.
Commissioner Kennedy.
So will there be a process that you'll go through to take the comments that you receive from the commission and then through public comment at meetings or as a part of your daily process? Will there be a process that you'll use to determine that this is something that needs review based on your daily implementation of the code and finding issues versus somebody just wants to come along and make a change?
Yeah, I mean, if people want to propose text amendments to the zoning ordinance, there's an avenue for that. They file an application, you know, so that's always available to everyone. These are issues that we've recognized and using it, and you know, I think as we've explained the process, we're going to bring this back and go through, you know, a public meeting process to sort of vet the list with the commission and then sort of talk through each of the issues and take a temperature.
Yeah, because individual commissioners may be sending suggestions. The staff is just compiling that list and will necessarily be bringing all those back so that it's seen publicly and reviewed and discussed by this commission publicly. So the submissions would just be so that it could be added to the list, which is then brought back.
All right, so I will now close the discussion on 9A. We have a deferred discussion on 6B, which is the minutes of the meeting for Wednesday, February the 17th. And do I have a mover of adoption of those minutes? Commissioner Newbold?
I'll move.
And a seconder? Commissioner Parry, excellent. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against,
Aye.
please say no. Are carried. And, Commissioner Kennedy is abstaining. And with that, there are no future commission agenda items and no written communications. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.